ताज़ा तरीन अपलोड्स की नोटिफिकेशन हासिल करने के लिए हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और साथ में दिए गए घंटी के निशान को दबाना ना भूलें।
Fool, why do you bestow false praise on the enemy, whose might and wisdom I have fathomed? Triumph and glory in this world are inaccessible to him who has a cowardly counselor like Vibhishan. The spy waxed angry to hear the words of the wicked monarch, and taking it to be an opportune moment, he took out the letter from Lakshman. Shri Ramji's younger brother Lakshman gave me this note. Have it read, my lord, and soothe your heart. Ravan laughed when he took the letter in his left hand, and summoning his minister, the fool asked him to read it out. Beguiling your mind with flattering words, O fool, do not bring your race to utter ruin. By quoting enmity with Sri Ramji, you will not be spared even though you seek the protection of Vishnuji, Brahmaji or Shivji. Therefore, abandoning pride like your younger brother, either seek the lotus feet of the Lord as a bee or be consumed with your family like a moth into the fire of Sri Ramji's shafts, O wretch. Ravan was dismayed at heart as he listened to the above message, but wore a fiend smile on his face and spoke aloud for all to hear. The younger hermit's grand eloquence is just like attempt of a man lying on a ground to clutch with the hands the vault of heaven. Said Shuka, my lord, giving up haughtiness, take every word of it as true. Abandon passion and give ear to my advice, my lord. Avoid clash with Sri Ramji. The hero of Raghu's line is exceedingly mild of disposition, even though he is the lord of the entire universe. The Lord will shower his grace on you the moment you meet him, and will not take to heart even a single offense of yours. Pray, restore Janakji's daughter to Sri Ramji. At least concede this request of mine. When Shuka asked him to surrender Videhaji's daughter, the wretch kicked him. Shuka, however, bowed his head at Ravan's feet and proceeded to the place where the all-merciful Lord of the Raghus was. Making obeisance to the Lord, he told him all about himself, and by Ramji's grace recovered his original state. He was an enlightened sage. It was by Agastya's curse, Parvatiji, that he had been transformed into a demon. Adoring Sri Ramji's feet again and again, the sage returned to his hermitage. Although 3 days had elapsed, the crass ocean would not answer the Lord's prayer. Sri Ramji thereupon indignantly said, there can be no friendship without inspiring fear. Lakshman, bring me my bow and arrow. I will dry up the ocean with a missile presided over by the god of fire. Supplication before an idiot, friendship with a rogue, inculcating liberty on a born miser, talking wisdom to one steeped in worldliness, glorifying dispassion before a man of excessive greed, a lecture on mind control to an irascible man, and a discourse on the exploits of Sri Hariji to a libidinous person are as futile as sowing seeds in a barren land. So saying, the Lord of the Raghus strung his bow, and this stand of the Lord delighted Lakshman's heart. When the Lord fitted the terrible arrow to his bow, a blazing fire broke out in the heart of the ocean. The alligators, serpents, and fishes felt distressed. When the god presiding over the ocean found the creatures burning, he gave up his pride, and assuming the form of a Brahmana, came with a gold plate filled with all kinds of jewels. Though one may take infinite pains in watering a plantain, it will not bear fruit unless it is hewed. Similarly, mark me, O king of birds, continues Kakabusandi, a vile fellow heeds no prayer but yields only when reprimanded. The god presiding over the ocean clasped the Lord's feet in dismay. Forgive me, my Lord, all my faults, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. All these, my Lord, are dull by nature. It is Maya, cosmic nature, which brought them forth for the purpose of creation under an impulse from you. So declare all the scriptures. One would attain happiness in life only by remaining where he has been placed by the Lord. My Lord has done well in giving me a lesson, but you have fixed certain limits for everyone. A drum, a rustic, a shudra, a beast, and a woman, all these deserve instructions. By the Lord's glory I shall be dried up, and the army will cross over, but this will bring no credit to me. Your command, however, is inviolable. Thus declare the Vedas. I shall do at once what pleases you. On hearing his most submissive words, the All-Merciful smiled and said, Tell me, dear father, some device whereby the monkey host may cross over. My lord, the two monkey brothers, Neel and Nal, got a boon in their childhood from a sage. Touched by them, even huge mountains will float on the ocean by your glory. Cherishing my Lord's greatness, I too shall help you to the best of my ability. In this way, my Lord, have the ocean bridged, so that this glorious achievement of yours may be sung in all three spheres of creation. With this arrow, my Lord, exterminate a race of the wild criminals inhabiting my north coast. On hearing this, Sri Ramji, who was as tender-hearted as he was staunch in battle, immediately relieved the agony of ocean's heart. The God presiding over the ocean was rejoiced and gratified to witness Sri Ramji's astounding might and valor. He related to the Lord all the doings of those villains, and bowing to his feet, ocean took his leave. The God presiding over the ocean left for his home. The idea of bridging this ocean commended itself to the blessed Lord of the Raghus. The story of Sri Ramji's exploits in this Kand, which wipes out the impurities of the Kali Yuga, has been sung by Tulsidas ji according to his own poor lights. The excellences of Sri Ramji, the Lord of Raghus, are an abode of delight, a panacea for all doubt and an unfailing remedy for sorrow. Therefore, giving up all other hope and faith, ever sing and hear them, O foolish mind. A recital of the virtues of Sri Ramji, the Lord of the Raghus, bestows all blessings. Those who reverently hear them cross the ocean of mundane existence without any bark. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Siya Ram. Thus ends the fifth descent into the Manas lake of Sri Ram's exploits that eradicates all the impurities of Kali Yuga. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Siya Ram. End of Sundarkand. Shri Ram Charit Manas, Descent 6, Lanka Kand. I adore Sri Ramji, the supreme deity, the object of worship even of Shivji, the destroyer of Cupid, the dispeller of the fear of rebirth, the lion to quell the mad elephant in the form of death, the master of yogis, attainable through immediate knowledge, the storehouse of good qualities, unconquerable, attributeless, immutable, beyond the realm of Maya, the Lord of Celestials, intent on killing the evildoers, the only protector of the Brahmanas, beautiful as a cloud laden with moisture, who has a lotus-like eyes and appeared in the form of an earthly king. I glorify Shankarji, the Lord of Kashi, the consort Girijaji, Himalayaji's daughter, the storehouse of good qualities, the destroyer of Cupid, worthy of all praise, shining like a conch shell or the moon, the most handsome person clad in a tiger skin, decked with dreadful ornaments in the shape of the deadly serpents, fond of the Ganga and the moon, the allayer of the sins of the Kali Yuga, and the celestial trees yielding the fruit of blessedness for the mere asking. May Lord Shambhuji, the bestower of blessings, who confirms on the virtuous even final beatitude, which is so difficult to obtain, and who punishes the evildoers, extend his blessings to me. O my soul, who do not worship Sri Ramji, who has the indivisible time for his bow and the various divisions of time, such as Paramanu, a twinkling, a moment, a year, an age, and a cycle for his fierce arrows. On hearing Ocean's words, Sri Ramji called his counselors and spoke to them thus: Why delay now? Build the bridges so that the army may cross over. Listen, O glory of the solar rays, said Jambavan with joined palms. Your name itself, my lord, is a bridge by ascending which men cross over the ocean of mundane existence. It will take no time to cross this insignificant sea. Hearing this, the son of the wind god added, My lord's glory is a great submarine fire that had long since sucked up the water of the ocean, but it was filled again by the flood of tears shed by your enemies' wives. That is how it came to be salty in taste. When the monkeys present there heard this hyperbolic remark made by the son of the wind god, they gazed on the person of Sri Ramji's, the lord of the Raghus, and smiled. Jambavan called the two brothers Nal and Neel and related to them the whole story. Calling to mind the glory of Sri Ramji, start building the bridge and you will experience no difficulty. He then called the monkey troops and said, Here, all of you, a small request of mine. Enshrine in your heart the lotus feet of Sri Ramji and engage yourself in a spot, bears and monkeys all. Go forth, you formidable monkey troops, and bring heaps of trees and mountains. On hearing this command, the monkeys and bears set forth, hurrahing and exclaiming, Glory to the almighty hero of Raghu's race. They would lift up gigantic trees and mountains in the mere spot and bring them to Nal and Neel, who in their turn carefully set to build the bridge. The monkeys brought huge mountains, which were received like play balls by Nal and Neel. When the All-Merciful saw the exceedingly beautiful construction of the bridge, he smiled and observed thus, This is the most delightful and excellent spot. Its glory is immeasurable and cannot be described in words. I will install an emblem of Lord Shambhuji here. It is the crowning ambition of my heart. Hearing this, the Lord of the Monkeys dispatched a number of messengers who invited and fetched all the great sages. Having installed an emblem of Lord Shivji and worshipped it with due solemnity, he said, No one else is so dear to me as Shivji. An enemy of Shivji, although he calls himself a devotee of mine, cannot attain to me even in a dream. He who is opposed to Shankarji and yet aspires for devotion to me is doomed to perdition, stupid and dull-witted as he is. Men who, though devoted to Shankarji, are hostile to me, and even so those who are enemies of Shivji, but votaries of mine, shall have their abode in the most frightful hell till the end of creation. They who will behold Lord Rameshwarji will, on quitting the body, go direct to my spear in heaven. And a man who takes the water of the Ganga and pours it on the Lord will attain liberation in the form of absorption into my being. Again, whosoever adores the Lord in a disinterested spirit and without guile will be blessed by Shankarji with devotion to me. And he who sees the bridge erected by me will be able to cross the ocean of worldly existence without any exertion. Sri Ramji's words gladdened the heart of all, and the great sages returned to each to his own hermitage. Says Shankarji, such is the way of the Lord of the Raghus. He ever loves those who take refuge in him. The clever Nal and Neel constructed the bridge, and by Ramji's grace their renown spread far and wide. Those very rocks that not only sink themselves but cause even other things to sink along with them floated like so many rafts. This is, however, not ascribed to any miraculous power of the ocean, nor to a virtue of the rocks themselves, nor again to any skill of the monkeys. It was by the might of Sri Ramji, the hero of Raghu's line, that rocks floated on the ocean. They are dull-witted indeed who go to worship a Lord other than Sri Ramji. Having completed the bridge, they made it exceptionally secure. The All-Merciful was glad at heart to see it. As the army marched, it was a sight beyond all telling. The troops of monkeys, warriors roaring as they went. Ascending an eminence near the bridge, the gracious Lord of the Raghus surveyed the vast expanse of the ocean. All the creatures inhabiting the ocean appeared on the surface in order to have a look at the Lord, who was the very fountainhead of mercy. There were many kinds of alligators, crocodiles, fishes and serpents, with bodies 800 miles in length and colossal in size. There were others who could devour even these. They in their turn were afraid of some other creatures. All gazed upon the Lord and would not stir even when diverted. They were all glad of heart and felt very happy. Covered by them, the water could not be seen. They were filled with ecstasy at the sight of Sri Hariji's beauty. The army advanced on receiving the Lord's command. Who can describe the vastness of the monkeys' host? The bridge being overcrowded, some of the monkeys flew through the air, while others crossed over, treading on the backs of sea monsters. The gracious Lord of the Raghus and his brother laughed at the sight of this amusing spectacle and marched. The hero of Raghu's line reached the other shores along with the host. The throng of monkey chiefs was beyond all description. The Lord encamped himself across the ocean and commanded all the monkeys to go and regale themselves on the delightful fruit and roots. As soon as they heard this, the bears and monkeys ran off in all directions. All the trees bore fruit in the interest of Sri Ramji in season or out of season without any regard to the laws of time. The bears and monkeys would eat the luscious fruit, shake the trees and hurt hilltops towards Lanka. If they ever found a straggling demon anywhere, they all hemmed him in and teased him not a little. Nay, they would bite off his nose and ears and let him go only after reciting to him the Lord's fair renown. Those who had thus lost their nose and ears went and related everything to Ravan. The moment he heard that the sea had been bridged, the 10-headed monster exclaimed in consternation with all his tongues at once, using different phraseology with each. What? Has he really bridged the waves, the billows, the sea, the ocean, the main, the deep, the brine, the tide, the Lord of rivers? Then, realizing his nervousness, he laughed and left for his palace, forgetting his fear. When Mandodari, Ravan's consort, heard that the Lord had arrived and bridged the ocean in mere sport, she took her spouse by the hand, led him to her own palace and spoke to him in most sweet accents. Bowing her head at his feet, she spread the end of her garment as a token of supplication and said, "Listen to my words without getting angry, my beloved. One should enter into hostilities with him alone, whom one may be able to conquer by wit or physical force. The disparity between you and the Lord of the Raghus, however, is certainly analogous to that obtaining between a firefly and the sun. He who disposed the most powerful Madhu and Kaitabh are finished the most valiant sons of Daitya, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. Nay, who bound Bali and dispatched King Sahasrabhavu, so called because he was possessed of 1,000 arms. It is he who has descended on earth in order to relieve it of its burden. My lord, you should not oppose him who is the master of time, fate and the soul. Bowing your head to Sri Ramji's lotus feet, restore Janakji's daughter to him. Then, handing over the kingdom to your son and retiring to the forest, worship the Lord of the Raghus. Sri Ramji, the Lord of the Raghus, my lord, is compassionate to the humble. He will surely forgive you. Even a tiger, the most ferocious of the beasts, will not devour a man if he goes submissively before him. You have already accomplished all that you had to do. You have conquered not only gods and demons, but the whole animate and inanimate creation. Holy men, my lord, have declared this maxim that a monarch should retire to the forest in the 4th stage of his life. There, my spouse, you should adore him who is the creator, preserver and destroyer of the universe. Renouncing all the worldly ties, my lord, worship the self-same hero of Raghu's line, who is fond of the suppliant. The same Lord of the Raghus, the king of Kaushala, whom the greatest of sages strive hard to realize, and for whom monarchs relinquish their throne and shed their attachment. My advice, your fair and exceedingly holy renown shall spread through all the 3 spheres. So saying, she clasped his feet, and with eyes full of tears and trembling in every limb, she added, My lord, worship Sri Ramji, the Lord of the Raghus, so that my union with you may last till eternity. Thereupon Ravan lifted Maya's daughter Mandodari, and the wretch began to help on his own glory. Listen, darling, you are haunted by the ideal fears. What warrior in this world is my equal? I have conquered by the might of my arm not only Varuna, the god presiding over the waters, Kubera, the god of riches, the wind god, Yama, the god of punishment, and all other regents of the quarters, but Death himself. Gods, demons, and human beings are all under my control. What is the cause of your fear then? He thus reassured her in many ways, and once more went and sat in his council chamber. Mandodari was now convinced at heart that it was her husband's impending death which had turned his head. Returning to his council hall, he asked his ministers, How shall we proceed to fight the enemy? Listen, O Lord of the demons, replied the ministers. Why do you ask this question again and again? What is there to be afraid of which should engage our thought? Human beings, monkeys and bears are our food. Hearing the words of all, Prahasta, Ravan's son, said with joined palms, Transgress not the bounds of propriety, my lord. Your counselors possess very little wit. All your stupid ministers tell you only that which is pleasing to their master. But that way you cannot succeed, my lord. A stray monkey sprang across the ocean and came this side, and all the people still extol his doings in their heart of hearts. What? Did none of you have any appetite then? Why did you not seize and devour him while he was burning your city? Your ministers have given you, my lord, an advice which, though pleasant to hear, will land you in trouble afterwards. He who has had the sea bridged in mere sport and has crossed over to the Swale hill with all his army, tell me, is he an ordinary mortal whom you say you will devour? All these people are simply bragging, dear father. Listen to my words with great attention and do not account me a coward. There are multitudes of men in this world who are given to hearing and uttering pleasant words. Those men, however, who hear and utter words which are most salutary yet jarring to the ear are few and far between, my lord. Listen to my sound advice. First, send an envoy to Sri Ramji, and afterwards, when you have restored Janakji's daughter, make friends with him. If he withdraws on receiving back his consort, you should have no more quarrel with him. Otherwise, meet him face to face on the battlefield and give him a tough fight. If, my lord, you accept this advice of mine, your fair renown will spread throughout the world in either case. The 10-headed monster asked his son Prahasta in a fury, Fool, who has taught you such wisdom? If you entertain doubt in your mind, even from now, my son, you have proved yourself to be a prickly plant at the root of the bamboo, which brings about the destruction of the bamboo. On hearing the harsh and most malignant remarks of his father, Prahasta left for his home uttering these bitter words. Words of good counsel fall flat on you, even as a medicine proves ineffectual for a man who is doomed to die. Finding that it was evening now, the 10-headed monster, turning towards his palace, fondly gazing on his 20 arms. On the highest level of Lanka stood a most wonderful hall where music and dancing contests used to be held. Ravan went and took his seat in that hall, while Kinara's celestial songsters began to sing his praises. Expert celestial nymphs commenced their dance to the accompaniment of cymbals, tabors, and lutes. He constantly revelled in luxuries which could be enjoyed only by 100 Indras. He had a most powerful foe threatening at his door, yet he had no anxiety or fear. At this end, the hero of Raghu's line encamped with his vast army on Mount Suvail. Observing a very lofty, supremely lovely, even and remarkably shining peak, Lakshman carefully spread on it with his own hands beautiful young leaves and blossoms of trees, which he covered with a charming and soft deerskin. It was on this seat that the gracious Lord rested himself. The Lord placed his head in the lap of Sugriv, the Lord of the monkeys, with the bow and quiver to his left and right. He was passing both his lotus hands on an arrow, while the would-be king of Lanka, Vibhishan, whispered some secret in his ears. The blessed Angad and Hanumanji kneaded his lotus feet in divers ways, while behind the Lord sat Lakshman in the pose of a warrior, with the quiver fastened at his waist and the bow and arrow ready in his hands. Thus rested Shri Ramji, the embodiment of benignity, beauty, and goodness. Blessed are those men who remain ever immersed in the thought of the Lord as depicted here. Looking towards the east, the Lord saw the moon risen above the horizon and said to them all, "Just look at the moon and see how undaunted like the king of beasts he appears. Dwelling in the eastern quarter, which may be compared to the mountain cave, this lion of a moon, an embodiment of supreme grandeur, glory and strength, struts through the forest of the sky, having rent as under the crown of a mad elephant in the form of darkness. The stars appear like so many pearls strewn all over the sky, which serve to adorn the lovely dame of night. Now tell me, brethren, continued the Lord, what do you think each of you of the dark spot in the moon? Said Sugriv, Listen, O Lord of the Raghus, it is only the shadow of the earth that is seen in the moon. The demon Rahu struck the moon, said another, and the spot is nothing but a scar left on the latter's bosom. A third suggested, when Brahmaji the creator fashioned the face of Ratiji, consort of the god of love, he took out the essence of the moon, thus leaving a hole in the orb thereof. The hole is still visible in the heart of the moon, and through it can be seen the shade of the blue. The Lord said, "Poison is the moon's most beloved brother. That is why he has lodged it in its heart, diffusing his envenomed rays torments parted lovers." Said Hanumanji, "Listen, my lord, the moon is your own beloved servant, and it is your image enshrined in the heart that appears as a dark patch." The all-wise Shri Ramji smiled to hear the words of Hanumanji, the son of the wind god. Then looking towards the south, the all-merciful Lord spoke thus, "Vibhishan, see how clouds are gathering fast, and the lightning flashes in the southern quarter. A lowering cloud is gently rumbling, and I fear lest a severe hailstorm may ensue." Vibhishan replied, "Listen, my gracious Lord, there is neither lightning nor a gathered mass of cloud. On the top of Lanka there stands a hall where Ravan is witnessing a dance and music contest. It is the large royal umbrella spread over his head which presents the appearance of a thick dark mass of cloud. The ornaments in Queen Mandodari's ears, my lord, flash like lightning, while the incomparable music of the cymbals and tabors is the sweet rumbling that you hear, O King of Celestials." The Lord smiled to perceive Ravan's arrogance. He strung his bow and fitted an arrow to the string. With a single shaft the Lord then struck Ravan's umbrella and crowns as well as Mandodari's eardrops, which fell to the ground before the very eyes of all. But none could know the mystery. Having performed this startling feat, Shri Ramji's shaft came back and dropped into his quiver again, and everybody in Ravan's assembly was alarmed to see this great interruption in his revelry. With a single shaft the Lord then struck Ravan's umbrella and crowns as well as Mandodari's eardrops, which fell to the ground before the very eyes of all. But none could know the mystery. Having performed this startling feat, Shri Ramji's shaft came back and dropped into his quiver again, and everybody in Ravan's assembly was alarmed to see this great interruption in his revelry. There was no earthquake nor strong gust of wind, nor did they see any weapon or missile. All, however, pondered within themselves that it was a most alarming ill omen. When the 10-headed monster saw that the assembly had taken fright, he laughed and made the following ingenious remarks. "How can the mere dropping down of crowns be an ill omen to him in whose case even the falling of heads provided a lasting boon? Therefore, return each to your own home and retire." Accordingly, all bowed their head and returned home. But anxiety lodged in Mandodari's hearts ever since her earrings dropped to the ground. With eyes full of tears and joining both her palms, she said, "O Lord of my life, listen to my prayer. My beloved, cease hostility with Shri Ramji and have no more of obstinacy in your heart, taking him to be a mere mortal. Believe my word that Shri Ramji, the jewel of Raghu's race, himself is manifested in the form of this universe, and that the Vedas conceive of every limb of his as a distinct sphere. The subterranean regions are his feet, and the abode of Brahmaji his head, while the other spheres are located in his other limbs. Terrible death is the mere contraction of his eyebrows. The sun is his eye, and the mass of clouds his locks. The twin-born gods, Ashwini Kumars, the celestial physicians, are his nostrils, and the alternating days and nights constitute the repeated twinkling of his eyelids, while the 10 quarters of the heavens are his ears. So declare the Vedas. The winds are his breath, and the Vedas his own speech. Greed is his lower lip, and Yama, the god who sits in judgment on the dead, his dreadful teeth. Maya, cosmic illusion, is his laughter, and the regents of the 10 quarters his arms. Fire is his mouth, and Varuna, the god presiding over the waters, his tongue, while the creation, preservation, and destruction of the universe are his gestures. The 18 principal species of the vegetable kingdom constitute the line of hair on his belly. The mountains are his bones, and the rivers represent the network of his veins. The ocean is his belly, and the inferno his organs of urination and excretion. In short, the universe is a manifestation of the Lord, and it is no use going into further details. Lord Shivji is his ego, Brahmaji his reason, the moon his mind, and the great Vishnuji is his faculty of understanding. It is the same Lord Shri Ramji manifested in the form of this animate and inanimate creation, who has assumed a human semblance. Pondering thus, hear me, O Lord of my life, cease hostility with the Lord, and cultivate devotion to the feet of Sri Ramji, the hero of Raghu's line, so that my good luck may not desert me. Adoring the Lord's feet and keeping his glory in his heart, Angad bowed his head to all and departed. The gallant son of Bali, who was an adept in warfare, was dauntless by nature, cherishing as he did the might of the Lord. As soon as he entered the city, he met one of Ravan's sons, Prahasta by name, who was playing there. From words they proceeded to fight, for both were unrivaled in strength and in the prime of youth to boot. He raised his foot to kick Angad, who in his turn seized the foot and, swinging him round, dashed him to the ground, finding him in a formidable warrior. The demons ran helter-skelter in large numbers, too much frightened to raise an alarm. They did not tell one another what had happened, but kept quiet when they thought of the death of Ravan's son. There was a cry in the whole city that the same monkey who had burnt down Lanka had come again. Who knows what turn Providence is going to take? Everyone thought in excessive dismay. People showed him the way unasked. If he but looked at anyone, the latter would turn deadly pale. With his thoughts fixed on lotus feet of Sri Ramji, he then reached the gate of Ravan's council chamber, and there the stout-hearted and mighty hero stood with the mien of a lion, glancing this side and that. He forthwith sent a demon and apprised Ravan of his arrival. On hearing the news, the 10-headed monster laughed and said, "Go, usher him in my presence, and let me see where the monkey has come from." Receiving his order, a host of messengers ran and fetched the monkey chief. Angad saw the 10-headed giant seated on his throne like a living mountain of collyrium. His arms looked like trees and his head like peaks, while the hair on his body presented the appearance of numerous creepers. His mouth, nostrils, eyes, and ears were as big as mountain caves and chasms. With an unflinching mind, he entered the court, the valiant son of Bali, possessed of great might. The assembly abruptly rose at the sight of the monkey. At this, Ravan's heart was filled with great fury. Thinking of Sri Ramji's might, Angad bowed his head and took his seat in the assembly as fearlessly as a lion treads in the midst of mad elephants. "Monkey, who are you?" Ravan asked. "I am an ambassador from the hero of Raghu's line, Ravan. There was friendship between you and my father. Hence, it is in your interest, brother, that I have come. Of noble descent and a grandson of the sage Pulastya, one of the mind-born sons of Brahmaji, you worshipped Lord Shivji and Brahmaji in various ways, obtained boons from them, accomplished all your objects, and conquered the guardians of the different spheres, as well as all earthly sovereigns. Under the influence of kingly pride or infatuation, you carried off Sitaji, the mother of the universe. But even now, you listen to my friendly advice, and the Lord will forgive all your offenses. Put a straw between the rows of your teeth and an axe by your throat, and take all your people, including your wives, with you, respectfully placing Janaji's daughter at the head. In this way, repair to him, shedding all fear, and address him thus: O protector of the suppliant, O jewel of Raghu's race, save me now. The moment he hears your piteous cry, the Lord will surely rid you of every fear. Mind what you speak, you little monkey. Fool, are you not aware of my being an avowed enemy of the gods? Tell me, young fellow, your own name as well as your father's. What is the common ground on which you claim fellowship between your father and myself? Angad is my name. I am Bali's son. Did you ever meet him? Ravan felt uncomfortable when he heard Angad's reply. Yes, I do remember that there was a monkey, Bali by name. But Angad, are you Bali's son? You have been born as a fire in a cluster of bamboos for the destruction of your own race. Why should you have not perished even in the womb? In vain were you born, who have called yourself with your own mouth as a hermit's envoy. Now tell me, if all is well with Bali, and if so, where is he? Angad laughed at this and then replied, 10 days hence you shall go to Bali, and embracing your friend personally enquire after his welfare. He will tell you all about the welfare that follows from hostility with Shri Ramji. Listen, O fool, the seeds of dissension can be sown in the mind of him alone, whose heart is close to the hero of Raghu's line. I forsooth am the exterminator of my race, while you, Ravan, are the preserver of yours. Even the blind and the deaf would not say so, whereas you possess a score of eyes and an equal number of ears. What? Did I bring dishonor on my family by acting as his ambassador, whose feet even Shivji, Brahmaji, and all the gods and sages desire to serve? It is strange that your heart does not burst asunder even on entering such an idea. When he heard the monkey's sharp rejoinder, Ravan glowered at him and said, Wretch, I put up with your harsh words only because I know the bounds of decorum and righteousness. Said the monkey, I too have heard of your piety, which is evident from the fact that you stroll away another's wife, and I have witnessed with my own eyes the protection you vouchsafed to an envoy. An upholder of piety, why do you not drown yourself and thus end your life? When you saw your sister with her ears and nose cut off, it was from considerations of piety that you forgave the wrong. Your piety is famed throughout the world. I too am very fortunate in having been able to see you. Prate no more, you stupid creature, but look at my arms, O foolish monkey, that are like so many Rahus to eclipse the tremendous moon-like might of the guardians of the spheres. Again, you might have heard that while resting on my lotus-like palms in the lake of heavens, Mount Kailas with Shambhuji shone like a swan. Listen, Angad, tell me which warrior in your army will dare encounter me. Your master, Ram, has grown weak due to separation from his wife, while his younger brother Lakshman shares his grief and is consequently very sad. You and Sugriv are like trees on a river bank that can be washed away any moment. As for your younger brother Vibhishan, he is a great coward. Your counselor Jambavan is too advanced in age and to take his stand on the field of battle, while Nal and Neel are mere architects and no warriors. There is one monkey, no doubt, of extraordinary might, he who came before and set fire to the city." On hearing this, Bali's son Angad replied, "Tell me the truth, O demon king. Is it a fact that a monkey burnt down your capital?" A puny monkey set on fire Ravan's capital. Who, on hearing such a report, would declare it as true? Ravan, he whom you have extolled as a distinguished warrior, is only one of Sugriva's petty runners. He who walks long distances is no champion. We sent him only to get news. It seems true that a monkey set fire to your capital without receiving an order from his master. That is why he did not go back to Sugriva and remained in hiding for fear. All that you say, Ravan, is true, and I am not in the least angry on hearing it. There is none in our army who would fight you with any amount of grace, make friends, or enter into hostilities only with your equals. This is a sound maxim to follow. If a lion were to kill frogs, will anyone speak well of him? Though it would be derogatory on the part of Shri Ramji to kill you, and he will incur great blame thereby. Yet, mark me, Ravan, the fury of the Kshatriya race is hard to face. The monkey Angad burned the enemy's heart with shafts of speech shot forth from the bow of sarcasm. And the 10-headed hero proceeded to extract the arrows, so to speak, with pairs of pincers in the form of rejoinders. He laughed and said, "A monkey possesses one great virtue. It does everything in its power to serve him who maintains it." Bravo for a monkey who dances unabashed in the service of its master anywhere and everywhere. Dancing and skipping about to amuse the people, it serves the interest of its master. This shows its keen devotion to the duty. Angad, all of your race are devoted to their lord. How could you then fail to extol the virtues of your master in the way you have done? I am a respecter of merit and too magnanimous to pay any attention to your scurrilously glib talk. Said Angad, "The son of the wind god gave me a true account of your partiality to merit. He laid waste your garden, killed your son, and set fire to your city, and yet, in your eyes, he did you no wrong. Remembering such amiability of your disposition, I have been so insolent in my behavior with you, O Ravan. On coming here, I have witnessed all that Hanuman told me, that is, that you have no shame, no anger, and no feeling of resentment. It is because you possess such a mentality that you have proved to be the death of your own father." Uttering these words, Ravan burst into laughter. "Having been the death of my father, I would have next claimed you as my victim. But a thought has come to me just now. Knowing you to be a living memorial of Bali's unsullied fame, I desist from killing you, O vile boaster. Tell me, Ravan, how many Ravans there are in the world, or hear from me how many I have heard of. One went to the netherworld to conquer Bali and was tied up in the stables by the children, who made sport of him and thrashed him till Bali took compassion on him and had him released. Another again was discovered by King Sahasrabahu, who ran and captured him as a strange creature and brought him home for the sake of fun. The sage Pulastya then went and secured his release. Yet another, I am much ashamed to tell you, was held tight under Bali's arm. Be not angry, Ravan, but tell me the truth. Which of these may you be? Listen, O fool, I am the same mighty Ravan, the spot of whose arms is familiar to Mount Kailas, the peak sacred to Lord Shivji, and whose valor is known to Uma's spouse Shivji himself. in whose worship I offered my heads as flowers. Times without number have I removed my lotus-like heads with my own hands to worship Lord Shivji, the slayer of Tripura. The prowess of my arms is well known to the guardians of the 8 quarters, whose heart, you fool, still smarts under the injuries inflicted by them. The toughness of my chest is familiar to the elephants supporting the 8 quarters, whose fierce tusks, whenever I impetuously grappled with them, failed to make any impression on it, and snapped off like radishes the moment they struck against it. Even as I walk, the earth shakes like a small boat when a mad elephant steps into it. I am the same Ravan, known for his might all over the world. Did you never hear of him? You lying prattler, you belittle that Ravan and extol a mortal man. Barbarous monkey, O puny wretch, I have now fathomed your wisdom. On hearing this, Angad indignantly replied, Take care what you say, you vainglorious wretch. How can he be accounted a man, you wretched Ravan, of whose very sight melted away the pride of Parashuram, the same Parashuram whose axe was like a fire to consume King Sahasrabhu's boundless forest of arms, or to use another simile, like the sea in whose swift tide have drowned innumerable kings time and time. How can Shri Ramji be a mortal, you arrogant fool? He is the god of love, a mere archer, the Ganga, a mere stream, the cow of plenty, a mere beast, the trees of paradise, a mere tree, the gift of food, an ordinary gift, nectar, an ordinary drink, Garuda, the mount of God Vishnuji, a mere bird, the 1,000-headed Sesha, a mere serpent, and the wish-yielding gem, a mere stone. O 10-headed monster, listen, O dullard. He is Vaikunt, an ordinary spear, and unflinching devotion to the Lord of the Raghus, an ordinary gain. What? He is Hanuman, O fool, an ordinary monkey, who got off unhurt after trampling your pride as well as that of your army, laying waste your garden, setting your capital on fire, and slaying your own son. Listen, Ravan, giving up all hypocrisy, why do you not adore the all-merciful Lord of the Raghus? O wretch, if you pit yourself against Ramji, even Brahmaji the Creator, the Rudra, Lord Shivji, cannot save you. Fool, brag not in vain. If you contend with Ramji, such will be your fate. Struck with Sri Ramji's arrows, your many heads will fall to the ground in front of the monkeys, and the bears and monkeys will play with those heads as with so many balls. When the Lord of Raghus gets enraged in battle and his many fierce arrows dart, will you then be able to bounce like this? Realizing this, adore the high-souled Sri Ramji. On hearing these words, Ravan flared up like a blazing fire on which clarified butter has been thrown. I have a brother like Kumbhakarna, one having ears as big as a pair of jars, and the renowned Meghnath, the vanquisher of Indraji, for my son. And have you never heard of my own valor, by which I have conquered the entire creation, both animate and inanimate? Fool, with the help of monkeys, your master has bridged the ocean. Is this what you call valor? There are many birds which fly across the ocean, yet listen, O monkey, they are no heroes at all. Now each of my arms is a veritable ocean, brimming over with a flood of strength, beneath which many a valiant god and man has been drowned. What hero is there who will cross these 20 unfathomable and boundless oceans? I made the guardians of the 8 quarters do menial service to me, while you, O wretch, glorify an earthly prince before me. If your lord whose virtues you recount again and again, is valiant in battle, why does he send an ambassador to me? Is he not ashamed to make terms with his enemy? Look at my arms, which lifted and violently shook Mount Kailas, and then, foolish monkey, extol your master if you like. What hero is there equal to Ravan, who with his own hands cut off his heads time and again, and offered them to the sacrificial fire with great delight, as will be borne out by Gauriji's spouse, Lord Shivji himself, when, as my skulls began to burn, I saw the decree of Providence traced on my brow, and read that I was going to die at the hands of a mortal. I laughed, for I knew Brahmaji's prophecy to be false. I am not afraid in my heart even when I remember this, for I am sure Brahmaji must have traced the decree in his senile dementia. Yet, you fool, you repeatedly exalt the might of another hero in my presence, giving up all shame and decorum. Angad replied, Yes, there is no one in the whole world so shamefaced as you. You are bashful by your innate disposition. Since you never indulge in self-praise, only the story of offering your heads to Lord Shivji and lifting the mountain Kailas has been foremost in your mind, and hence you have told it 20 times over. As for the tale of that strength of arm by which you were able to conquer Sahasrabahu, Bali and Bali, you have kept it secret in your heart. Listen, fool, and brag no more. Can anyone turn a hero by cutting off one's head? A juggler is never called a hero, even though he hacks to pieces his whole body with his own hands. Ponder, O fool, and see for yourself that due to infatuation, moths burn themselves in fire and donkeys carry loads. But they are never termed as heroes. Cease wrangling any more, O wretch, listen to my advice, and have done away with pride. I have not come to you as an envoy to seek terms with you, O 10-headed monster. The hero of Raghu's line has sent me from other considerations. The All-Merciful has said again and again, a lion earns no reputation by killing jackal. Bearing in mind the words of my lord, I have suffered, O fool, your pungent speech. Otherwise, I would have smashed your jaws and taken back Sitaji by force. I have judged your strength, O vile enemy of heaven, from the very fact that you carried off another's wife while she was all by herself. You are the lord of demons and exceedingly haughty, while I am a messenger of one of Sri Ramji's servants. If I were not afraid of insulting Sri Ramji, I would have brought this wonder before your very eyes. Dashing you to the ground, exterminating your army, and laying waste your town, a fool, I would have taken away Janakji's daughter with all your wives. Even if I did so, it would hardly bring me any credit, for it is no act of valor to slay the slain. A follower of the Vamagi, a sect of Shakti worshippers, indulging in certain prohibited practices as a part of their worship, a man given over to lust, a miser, a grossly stupid fellow, an utterly destitute person, a man suffering from disrepute, an extremely old man, an ever sick person, one who is always angry, he who is hostile to Lord Vishnuji, an enemy of the Vedas and saints, he who exclusively nourishes his own body, he who is given to slandering others, and he who is storehouse of sins, these 14 persons are no better than corpses, even while they live. Realizing this, O wretch, I refrain from killing you, but rouse my anger no more. On hearing this, the demon king bit his lips, wrung his hands, and burst out furiously. O vile monkey, you are now bent upon dying, for though small, you have spoken big words. He on whose strength you dare utter such wild and sharp words, O stupid monkey, has no strength, glory, intelligence, or majesty at all. Finding him devoid of merit and self-esteem, his father has sent him to exile. Apart from that sorrow, the separation from his wife is telling on him, and above all, he is constantly obsessed with terror of me. The demons devour day and night many such men as he of whose might you are proud. Realize this, O fool, and cease to be perverse. When he thus inveighed against Sri Ramji, the monkey chief grew furious with rage. For he who opens his ears to vituperation against Hariji, Bhagwan Vishnuji, or Haraji, Lord Shivji, incurs as great a sin as he who kills a cow. Angad, the great monkey, gave a loud yell and furiously struck both his mighty arms against the ground. The earth shook and members of the assembly were thrown off their seats and took to flight. Possessed as they were by the hobgoblin of fear, the 10-headed monster Ravan too was about to topple down, but recovered himself and stood up. Yet his most beautiful crowns fell to the ground. Some of them he took and set on his heads, while Angad sent the rest flying to the Lord. The monkeys fled when they saw the crowns coming. Good heavens! How is it that meteors have begun to fall even during the daytime? Or is it that Ravan in his fury has hurled 4 thunderbolts which are coming with great speed? The Lord smiled and said, Be not afraid at heart. They are neither meteors nor thunderbolts, nor even the planets Rahu and Ketu. They are the crowns of the 10-headed Ravan dispatched by Bali's son Angad that are coming this side. The son of the wind god sprang forward and caught them in his hands. He then took them to the Lord and placed them before him. The bears and monkeys gazed on them with wonder, for they were dazzling like the sun. At the other end, the 10-headed monster, Ravan, in his fury, indignantly cried to all about him, Seize the monkey, and seizing him forthwith, slay him. Angad smiled to hear this. After killing him, sally forth at once, all you mighty warriors, and devour every bear and monkey wherever you find one. Go and clear the earth of monkeys and capture the 2 ascetic brothers, Ram and Lakshman, alive. The monkey prince Angad got enraged and exclaimed again, Are you not ashamed to wag your tongue like this? Cut your throat and die, you shameless destroyer of your race. Your heart does not crack even on witnessing my strength, O vicious stealer of women, storehouse of impurities. O sense-bound, dull-witted wretch, you babble abuse in a state of delirium, which shows that death has overtaken you, O wretched demon. You will reap its consequences later on, when the monkeys and bears belabor you. Even as you utter the words that Sri Ramji is immortal, it is strange that your tongues, O proud demon, do not drop off. It is, however, certain that your tongues will drop off along with your heads on the battlefield. How can he be a mortal, O 10-headed monster, who killed Bali with a single shaft? You are blind with all your 20 eyes. Fie upon your birth, O dullard of ignoble Om. Sri Ramji's arrow are all thirsting for your blood, and I spare you only for the fear of displeasing him, O wild demon of biting tongue. I am capable of smashing your jaws, but I have no command from the Lord of the Raghus to do so. Otherwise, I feel so enraged that I would break all your 10 heads and lifting up Lanka, drop it into the ocean. Your Lanka is like a fruit of the Udumbaras tree, while you are like so many unsuspecting insects that reside in it. A monkey as I am, I would lose no time in eating it. But the gracious Ramji has not given me the order. Ravan smiled to hear this witty remark. Fool, Where did you learn to tell such big lies? Bali never boasted like this. It seems association with the hermits has made you such a wanting liar. I am a blustering liar indeed, O monster with 20 arms, if I do not tear out your 10 tongues. Recalling Sri Ramji's might, Angad grew indignant and firmly planted his foot in the midst of the whole assembly. If you can but stir my foot, O fool, Sri Ramji will return forthwith, and I shall forego Sitaji as a lost wager. Listen, champions all, exclaimed the 10-headed monster. Seize the monkey by the leg and dash him to the ground. Meghnad, the vanquisher of Indraji, and many other stout warriors rose with delight from their respective seats and rushed with all their might, employing numerous devices, but Angad's foot refused to stir. The competitors therefore resumed their seats with their heads bent low. The enemies of heaven rose again and dashed forward, but the monkey's foot moved no more than a sensually minded striver. O Garuda, the enemy of serpents, is able to uproot the tree of error implanted in the heart, continues Kakabusandiji. Myriads of great warriors of Meghnad's might arose with joy and swooped down, but the monkey's foot did not budge, and they hung their heads and sat down again. The monkey's foot would no more leave the ground than the soul of a saint would give up moral uprightness, even though confronted with the numberless obstacles. The enemy's pride left him when he witnessed this. Everyone who saw the monkey's strength was discomfited at heart. Challenged by the monkey, Ravan himself now rose. Even as Ravan proceeded to grasp his foot, Bali's son Angad broke out, "You cannot be saved by clinging to my feet. Fool, why do you not go and clasp Sri Ramji's feet?" He turned back much abashed at heart to hear this. All his splendor was gone, and he was robbed of his glory, even as the moon fades away at midday. With drooping heads, he resumed his seat on the throne as if despoiled of all his riches. Sri Ramji is the soul of the universe and the Lord of life. How can he who is hostile to him find any rest? The universe, Parvatiji, springs into existence and is again dissolved with the mere play of Sri Ramji's eyebrows. When he is capable of transforming a blade of grass into a thunderbolt and a thunderbolt into a blade of grass, how then can a vow of his ambassador prove false? Angad admonished him in various ways, but as his end had drawn near, he would not listen. Having quashed the enemy's pride, the son of King Bali glorified his lord to his very face and departed, saying, "If I do not slay you after I have spotted with you on the battlefield for some time, it will be no use my indulging in self-praise just now." Angad had killed Ravan's son even before he arrived in the latter's presence, and Ravan felt very sad at that news. The demons too grew particularly nervous with the fear when they witnessed the effectiveness of Angad's challenge. Setting at naught Ravan's power, the mighty monkey, Bali's son, his body thrilling over with emotion and eyes full of tears, clasped in delight Sri Ramji's lotus feet. Perceiving that it was evening, the 10-headed monster returned disconsolably to his palace, where Mandodari again spoke and advised him, "Ponder in your mind, my beloved lord, and abandon perversity. Your conflict with the lord of the Raghus is quite out of place. Sri Ramji's younger brother Lakshman had traced a thin line. That too you could not cross. Such is your valor, my beloved. Do you expect to conquer him in battle, whose messenger performed such a feat? Leaping across the ocean in mere sport, that lion among monkeys fearlessly entered your Lanka, killed your guards, and laid waste your garden. Nay, he killed Prince Aksha under your very nose, and setting fire to the whole capital, reduced it to ashes. Where did your pride of power remain lurking at that time? Indulge no more in idle boasts, my spouse, and lay my words a little to heart. Do not imagine that the Lord of the Raghus is a mere earthy king, my husband, but know him to be the ruler of the animate and inanimate creation, unequaled in strength. The might of his arrows is known to Maricha, but you did not heed his words, taking him to be a mean fellow. In Janakji's court were assembled numberless kings. You too were present there with your incomparable and enormous strength. There Shri Ramji broke Shivji's bow and won the hand of Janakji's daughter. Why did you not conquer him in battle then? The son of Indraji, the Lord of Celestials, tasted of his strength when he caught hold of him and spared his life after destroying one of his eyes. You also witnessed Shurpanaka's condition, yet you did not feel much abashed in your heart. My 10-headed lord tried to recognize him, who, having slain Virad as well as Khar and Dushan, killed Kabandh in mere sport and disposed of Bali with a single arrow. He who had the ocean bridged as a mere pastime and has encamped with his host on Mount Suvel, the same merciful Lord, the glory of the solar race, sent you in your own interest an ambassador who, like a lion in the midst of a herd of elephants, trampled on your might in open court. Nay, has for his servants most formidable warriors like Angad and Hanuman, who are so dauntless in battle, and still, my beloved Lord, you speak of him again and again as a mortal. In vain do you carry on your head the burden of pride, attachment, and arrogance. O my Lord, you have turned hostile to Sri Ramji and overtaken as you are by death. The light of wisdom does not dawn on your mind. Death does not smite anyone with uplifted rod. He simply robs the victim of his piety, strength, reason, and judgment. He alone, whom death has approached very near, falls a prey to delusion like you. 2 of your sons have been slain, and your capital has been burned down. Retrace your step even now, my beloved. Adore the all-merciful Lord of the Raghus, my husband, and win unsullied fame thereby. Hearing the words of his consort Mandodari, which were piercing like a shaft, he rose and left for his council chamber as soon as the day broke. Forgetting all his fears, he went and occupied his throne, bloated with excess of pride. At this end, Sri Ramji summoned Angad, who came and bowed his head at the Lord's lotus feet. The gracious Ramji, the slayer of Khara, most politely seated him by his side and smilingly said, O son of Bali, I have great curiosity in my mind, therefore I ask you a question. Tell me the truth, dear child. Ravan is the head of the demon race. He is celebrated throughout the world for his incomparable might. It is rather strange that you tossed no less than 4 of his crowns to me. Tell me, my son, by what device you are able to lay your hands on them. Listen, omniscient Lord, the delighter of the suppliant. There were no crowns but the 4 virtues, resources of a king, that is Shama, conciliation, Dana, gift, Danda, physical force or coercion, and Bheda, division, which abide in the heart of a king, so declare the Vedas, my Lord. They are the beautiful pedestals of statesmanship. Remembering this, they themselves came to my Lord, who is the true repository of all statesman-like virtues. Listen, O Lord of Kaushala, Ravan, the 10-headed monster, is lacking in piety. bears a settled aversion to my Lord's feet and has fallen into the clutches of death. Hence, the aforementioned virtues have forsaken him and sought refuge in you." The noble-minded Ram smiled to hear his most ingenious reply. The son of Bali then gave him a report about the fort of Lanka. When Sri Ramji received the news about the enemy, he summoned all his counselors by his side. "Lanka has 4 massive gates. Take counsel as to how we should assail them." Thereupon the monkey lord Sugriv, Jambavan the king of bears, and Vibhishan, Ravan's brother, invoked in their heart the armament of the solar rays, and putting their heads together, they resolved upon a definite plan. They divided the monkey host into 4 brigades and appointed efficient generals to each. They then summoned all the company commanders, and bringing the Lord's might home to them, issued instructions, hearing which the monkeys rushed forward, roaring like lions. They gladly bowed their head at Sri Ramji's feet, and with the mountain peaks in their hands, all the heroes sallied forth, shouting, "Glory to the hero of Raghu's line, the Lord of Kaushala." The bears and monkey chiefs roared and assumed a threatening attitude. Even though they knew that Lanka was a most impregnable fortress, the monkeys marched forward, undaunted, depending on the might of their lord. Encompassing all the 4 quarters like a mass of clouds, spreading over the horizon on all sides, they imitated the sound of the drums and kettle drums with their mouth. "Glory to Ram, glory to Lakshman, and glory to Sugriv, the lord of monkeys." Thus roared the monkeys and bears, unsurpassed in their great might, like so many lions. Lanka became a scene of great uproar. When the highly concealed Ravan heard of it, he with a smile said, "Look at the insolence of these monkeys," and summoned the demon host. "The monkeys have crossed over here driven by fate, and my demons are all hungry. God has provided them with a meal even at their home." So saying, the idiot burst into a hoarse laugh. "Sally forth in every direction, champions all, and wherever you find the bears and monkeys, seize and devour them all." Umaji, Ravan's conceit was as great as that of the sandpiper, which goes to sleep with its legs in the air and thinks that it will support the heavens in case they fall. Taking his orders, the demons sallied forth, armed with excellent slings, javelin, iron clubs and maces, fierce axes, pikes, swords, bludgeons, and masses of rock in their hands. As foolish carnivorous birds swoop down upon a heap of rubbish the moment they see it, and have no idea of the pain they would have on breaking their beaks against it, so did the man-eating monsters rush forth in their folly, armed with bows and arrows, as well as with other weapons of various kinds. A vast cloud of mighty and valiant demons, staunch in battle, climbed up the battlements of the fort. On the gold battlements they looked like the dark clouds hanging on the heights of the Mount Meru. Martial drums and tabors sounded, the soul of the warriors was stirred by their crash. Numberless kettle drums and clarinets were also playing, their music cracked the heart of cowards. Advancing further, the demons saw the hosts of monkey and bear champions, exceptionally huge in size, who in their onrush would make no account of rugged valleys, and catching hold of mountains would cleave them asunder and make passage through them. Gnashing their teeth and biting their lips, myriads of warriors on both sides roared and bullied, calling here on Ramji and there on Ravan. With shouts of victory on both sides, the flight actually commenced. The demons cast down volleys of mountain peaks, which the monkeys would seize with a bound and hurl them back. The fierce monkeys and bears would lay hold of masses of rock and hurl them against the fort. Darting against their adversary, they would seize him by the leg and dash him to the ground, and in the event of his taking to flight, they would challenge him into a duel again. The most agile and redoubtable monkeys and bears lightly sprang and climbed up the fort, and penetrating the palaces, sang Sri Ramji's praises wherever they pleased. Catching hold of a demon, each of the monkeys rushed back and jumped down to the ground with the demons beneath themselves on the top. Strengthened by Sri Ramji's might, the monkeys' host crushed the ranks of the demon warriors. They then climbed up the fort here and there and shouted glory to the hero of Raghu's line, who was majestic as the sun. The demon host fled before them like a mass of clouds, driven by a strong blast. The city now burst into wails and howls. Children, invalid, and women in particular wept aloud. All joined in calling Ravan names. He, they said, had invited death while enjoying sovereignty. When he heard that his troops had beaten a retreat, the king of Lanka rallied his champions and then exclaimed in fury, "If I hear of anyone turning his back on the battlefield, I will behead him with my own terrible sword. You consumed my all and enjoyed all sorts of luxuries till now, and lo, life has become so dear to you on the field of battle." The champions were all alarmed and put to shame to hear this stern rebuke, and marched against the enemy in great fury. To die in open combat is the glory of a warrior, they thought, and they loved their life no more. Armed with weapons of various kinds, all the champions grappled with their antagonists, challenging them again and again. Striking the bears and monkeys with iron bludgeons and tridents, they deprived them of their nerve. Struck with terror, continued Lord Shivji, the monkeys turned tail, although Umaji, they would come out victorious in the end. One exclaimed, "Where are Angad and Hanuman? Where are the mighty Nal and Neel and Dvivida?" At the time Hanuman heard that his troops were breaking, that mighty warrior held his position at the western ghats of Lanka, where Meghnad led the defense. The gate, however, would not give way, and Hanuman was faced with a mighty impediment. The son of the wind god grew terribly furious at heart, and the warrior, who was formidable as death, gave a loud roar. He sprang and reached the fort of Lanka, and seizing a rock, he rushed at Meghnad, shattered his chariot, overthrew the charioteer, and kicked Meghnad himself at his chest. Another charioteer, who perceived the distress of the prince, picked him up in his own chariot and speedily brought him home. When Angad heard that the son of the wind god had gone to the fort single-handed, the son of Bali, who was so valiant in battle, reached the fort in a single bound, as a monkey would do out of sheer fun. The two monkeys let loose their fury against the enemy on the battlefield, invoking in their heart the might of Sri Ramji. Both ran up to Ravan's own palace and proclaimed the victory of Kaushala's lord. Holding the edifice in their hands, they overthrew it with every pinnacle. The demon king was dismayed when he saw this. The women beat their breast with their hands, crying, "This time the two pestilent monkeys have come." Angad and Hanumanji frightened them with their monkey-like pranks and proclaimed to them the glories of Sri Ramchandraji. Then, grasping each a gold pillar in their hands, the two champions exclaimed, "Let us now begin upon our ravaging job." Presently they roared and fell on the enemy's ranks and began to crush them with their mighty strength of arms, striking some with their foot and slapping another on the face and crying, "Take the consequences of not adoring Sri Ramji." The two heroes crushed their adversaries one against another, and pulling off the victims' heads, hurled them with such precision that they dropped in front of Ravan and burst like so many earthen vases full of curds. Whenever the two monkey chiefs caught hold of any great general of the demon host, they would seize him by the leg and send him flying to their lord Shri Ramji. Vibhishan ji would mention their name, and Shri Ramji assigned even them a quarter in his own abode. Man-eating monsters who feasted on the flesh of holy Brahmanas thus attained a destiny which is solicited even by yogis, ascetics given to contemplation on God. Umaji, continued Lord Shivji, Shri Ramji is so tender-hearted and such a storehouse of compassion that he bestows the highest state, final beatitude, even on the demons. Remembering that they think of him even though in a spirit of hostility. Tell me, Bhavani ji, who else is so benignant? Most dull-witted and utterly wretched are the men who, even on hearing of such a Lord, worship him not, disabusing themselves of all delusion. Angad and Hanuman ji have evidently forced their way into the fort of Lanka. Thus observed Ayodhya's Lord. Rampaging in Lanka, the two monkeys looked like a pair of mandaras churning the ocean. Having crushed and battered the enemy's ranks by the might of their arm, and perceiving that it was now the close of day, the two champions jumped down without any exertion and came where the Lord was. They bowed their head at the lotus feet of their master, and the Lord of the Raghus was glad at heart to see the valiant warriors. Shri Ramji graciously regarded them both, and presently their fatigue was gone and they felt supremely happy. On learning that Angad and Hanumanji had left, the numerous monkey and bear warriors retired from the field, while the demons, recovering their strength at nightfall, sallied forth, calling on their 10-headed lord. At the sight of the demon host, the monkeys turned again, and gnashing their teeth in a fury, the champions closed with their opponents here and there. The two armies stood formidable, their champions challenging one another every time, came to a grim fight without giving in. The demons were all great warriors and dark in complexion, while the monkeys were stupendous in size and of numerous colors. The two armies were equally strong, and the warriors too equally matched. Displaying their martial feats, they fought with fury and looked like masses of rainy and autumnal clouds driven against one another by a strong wind. The generals Akampana and Atikaya, sons of Ravan, when they perceived their troops losing ground, employed Maya, elusive devices. In an instant it grew pitch dark, and there was a downpour of blood, stone, and ashes. Seeing the dense darkness all around, the monkey host was thrown into disorder. They could not see one another, and there was an outcry everywhere. The Lord of the Raghus understood the secret of it all and summoned Angad and Hanumanji. He apprised them of all that was going on and issued necessary instructions to them. The two monkey chiefs rushed forth in a fury as soon as they heard the instructions. The All-Merciful then drew his bow with a smile and forthwith let fly a fiery dart. Lo, there was light all around, and no trace of darkness left anywhere. Even as doubts disappear with the dawn of spiritual enlightenment, the bear and monkeys were relieved of their fatigue and rid of all fear when they saw light again, and pressed on exultingly. Hanumanji and Angad thundered on the field of battle, and the demons fled at their menacing roar. But the bears and monkeys seized the demon warriors in their flight and dashed them to the ground, performing marvelous feats of strength even as they did so, or catching them by the leg, hurling them into the ocean, where alligators, serpents, and fish snapped them up and devoured them. Some were killed, some more were wounded, while others scampered away and clambered the fort. Having thus scattered the hostile forces, the bears and monkeys gave a loud roar. Perceiving that it was now night, all the 4 divisions of the monkey host returned to the camp of Kaushala's lord. The monkeys were all relieved of their fatigue the moment Sri Ramji cast his benign look on them. There, in Lanka, the 10-headed monster sent for all his ministers and told them about the warriors that had been killed in action. The monkeys have disposed of half of our forces. Tell me at once what counsel should be adopted. Thereupon Malyawan, a very aged demon, who was Ravan's maternal grandfather and an eminent counselor, spoke words of highly devout wisdom. Listen, my son, to a few words of advice from me. Ever since you carried off Sita ji and brought her here, there have been ill omens more than one can tell. By opposing Sri Ramji, whose glory has been the theme of the Vedas and Puranas, none has ever enjoyed happiness. The same gracious Lord who dispatched Hiranyaksha with his brother Hiranyakashipu, as well as the mighty Madhu and Kaitabha, has descended on earth in the person of Sri Ramji. Hostility is quite out of question with him, who is the personification of the time spirit, the principle of destruction. A fire to consume the forest in the shape of the wicked, a repository of virtues and an embodiment of wisdom, and who is adored even by Shivji and Brahmaji. Giving up all quarrel with Sri Ramji, restore Videhaji's daughter to him and worship the All-Merciful, who has a most loving disposition. His words stung Ravan like shafts. Away, wretch, with your accursed face! If it were not for your age, I would have finished you. Now please do not appear before my eyes again. Malyavant, however, thought within himself that the All-Merciful would soon kill him. He, therefore, rose and departed, abusing Ravan as he went. Meghnad thereupon exclaimed in a fury, "See what wonders I worked the very next morning! I am going to accomplish much. Why should I, therefore, belittle its worth by speaking of it just now?" Confidence returned to Ravan when he heard his son's words, and he fondly took him into his lap. The day broke even while they deliberated, and the monkeys again assailed the 4 gates. In their fury they laid siege to the most powerful citadel. This gave rise to an uproarious alarm in the city. The demons darted forward with their weapons of every description and hurled down mountain peaks from the ramparts. The demons hurled mountain peaks in myriads and fired bombshells of every description, which came roaring like a crash of thunder, while the contending warriors roared like the clouds on the day of universal destruction. Fierce monkey warriors combated with their adversaries and had their bodies severely wounded and badly battered. Yet they languished not. Seizing rocks, they hurled them against the fort, and the demons fell to them wherever they stood. When Meghnad heard that the monkeys had come and besieged the fort again, the hero tore down the fort and sallied forth with beat of drum to meet the enemy face to face. Where are the 2 brother princes of Kaushala, those archers celebrated throughout the spears? Where are Nal and Neel, Dvivida and Sugriv, as well as Angad and Hanuman, the most powerful of all? Where is Vibhishan, the traitor to his own brother? I will kill them all today, and him, Vibhishan, too, at all events. So saying, he fitted sharp arrows to his bow, and in excess of fury drew the string up to his ear. Presently he started discharging a volley of arrows that flew like so many winged serpents. Everywhere monkeys were seen falling to the ground. At that time there was none who would dare to face him. Bears and monkeys fled in every direction. None had any desire left to continue the fight. Not a single monkey or bear was to be seen on the field whom he had left with anything but life. He struck his opponents with 10 arrows each, and the monkey warriors dropped to the ground. Meghnad, who was as powerful as he was staunch in fight, now roared like a lion. When the son of the winged god saw his army in distress, he flew into rage and rushed forth as if he were death personified. He forthwith tore up a huge rock and hurled it at Meghnad with great fury. When he saw the rock coming towards him, he mounted up into the air, leaving his car, charioteer, and horses to perish. Again and again did Hanumanji challenge him to a duel, but the demon dared not to come nearer, for he knew the monkey's real strength. Meghnad now approached Shri Ramji and hurled every kind of abuse at him. He tried weapons and missiles of every description against him, but the Lord with the utmost ease cut them as under before they could reach him. The fool was put out of countenance when he saw the Lord's might, and began to practice all sorts of elusive devices, as if catching hold of a poor little snakeling one way to frighten Garuda and sport with him. The evil-minded demon displayed his demoniac powers before him whose powerful Maya, deluding potency, holds sway over all, both great and small, Shivji and the Creator not excepted. Mounting up into the air, he rained down a shower of firebrands, and spouts of water issued forth from the earth. Fiends and fiendesses of diverse form danced with cries of maim and kill. Now he would rain down showers of pus, blood, hair and bones, and now he would hurl a volley of stones. By discharging dust all around, he made it so dark that if you held out your own hand, you would not see it. The monkeys lost their nerve when they saw this supernatural phenomenon. At this rate, we are all doomed, they thought. Sri Ramji smiled when he saw this fun. At the same time, he understood that the monkeys were all alarmed. With a single arrow, he broke the elusive web, even as the sun removes the thick veil of darkness. He cast a gracious look on the monkeys and bears, and lo, they grew too strong to be restrained from fighting. Asking leave of Sri Ramji and accompanied by Angad and other monkey chiefs, Lakshman marched forth in fury, bow and arrow in hand. With bloodshot eyes, a broad chest and long arms, his white form shone like the snow-clad Himalaya with a slight admixture of red. At the other end, the 10-headed monster sent out champions who rushed forth equipped with missiles and other weapons of every description. With mountains, claws, and trees for weapons, the monkeys hastened to meet the demons, shouting, "Victory to Ramji!" They all closed in the fray, match with match, both the sides equally agog to win. The monkeys, who had now the upper hand, battered the demons with their fists and feet and bit them with their teeth. They struck them down and browbeat them. "Kill! Kill! Seize! 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 Slay! Break his head! Seize his arm and tear it up!" Such were the cries that filled the air through all the 9 divisions of the globe. Headless bodies sprinkled furiously hither and thither. Hosts of celestials witnessed the spectacle from heaven, now with joy and now in dismay. Blood had collected in the hollows of the earth and dried up there, and clouds of dust hung over it like ashes over heaps of live coal. The wounded warriors shone like so many Kimsuk trees in flower. The two champions, Lakshman and Meghnad, grappled with each other in mounting fury. Neither could get the better of the other. The demon, however, resorted to willy tricks and unfair means. Lakshman, who was no other than Anant, the serpent god Sesha, whose wrath brings about the dissolution of the universe, then waxed furious, and in a trice smashed the chariot and tore its driver to pieces. Sesha, that is Lakshman, smote him in so many ways that the demon Meghnad was all but dead. The son of Ravan thought within himself that he was in straits, and the enemy would surely take his life. He threw a javelin, which was notorious for killing warriors and was all brilliance, and lo, it struck Lakshman in the breast. The blow was so smart that the prince swooned, and Meghnad now went near him, shedding all fear. A vast number of champions as powerful as Meghnad strove to lift him, but how could Sesha, the support of the entire globe, be thus lifted? Hence they returned, smarting with shame. Listen, Parvati ji, continues Lord Shankar ji. None can conquer him in battle, the fire of whose wrath speedily consumes all the 14 spheres at the time of universal dissolution, and whom gods and human beings, nay, all animate and inanimate beings adore. He alone can understand this mystery, on whom descends Shri Ramji's grace. Now that it was evening, both the armies retired, and the commanders of the different units began taking count of their troops. The all-merciful and invincible Lord of the universe, the all-pervading Supreme Spirit, asked, "Where is Lakshman?" Meanwhile Hanumanji brought him. Seeing his younger brother in a swoon, the Lord felt so distressed. Jambavan said, "Sushen, the physician, lives in Lanka. Someone should be sent to fetch him here." Assuming a minute form, Hanumanji went and immediately brought him, house and all. Sushena came and bowed his head at Sri Ramji's lotus feet. He mentioned the name of the herb as well as of the mountain where it could be had, and said, "Proceed, O son of the wing god, to bring it." Enshrining Sri Ramji's lotus feet in his heart and assuming the lord of his own might, the son of the wing god departed. At the other end, a spy disclosed the secret to Ravan, who called at the house of Kalnemi, a demon ally of Ravan. The 10-headed monster told him all that he had to say, hearing which Kalnemi beat his head again and again. "Nobody can obstruct him who burnt your capital before your own eyes. Therefore, adore the Lord of the Raghus in your own interest, and desist, my lord, from all vain prattle. Hold in your heart that lovely form, Swadi, as the blue lotus, the delight of all eyes. Dismiss the foolish idea of I and you, mine and thine, and awake from the slumber in the night of the gross infatuation. Can anyone even dream of conquering him in battle, who devours even the serpent of time, which in its turn devours the entire creation?" The 10-headed monster flew into a tearing rage when he heard this. Thereupon Kalnemi reasoned to himself, "I should rather die at the hands of Sri Ramji's servant, for this wretch revels in his load of sins." So saying to himself, he departed and resorted to his black art. He produced by the path a lake, a temple, and a lovely garden. The son of the wing god saw the good hermitage and thought to himself, "Let me ask leave of the hermit over there and drink some water, so that I may be relieved of my fatigue." The demon Kalnemi had ensconced himself there in the deceitful garb of a hermit and sought to delude the messenger even of the Lord of Maya. The son of the wind god went and bowed his head before him, and the demon in his turn began to recite Sri Ramji's praises. A fierce war is raging between Sri Ramji and Ravan, of which Ramji will undoubtedly emerge victorious. I behold everything, my brother, even from here, for my great strength lies in my intuition. On his asking for water, the demon gave Hanumanji his own water pot, but the monkey chief said, "My thirst will not be quenched by a small quantity of water." Then take a plunge in the lake and speedily come back. After that, I will initiate you and you will have spiritual insight. No sooner had Hanumanji stepped into the lake than a she-alligator seized him by the foot in great excitement. Having been slain by Hanumanji, she assumed a celestial form and mounting an aerial car soared into heavens. By your very sight, O dear monkey, I have been absolved of all my sins, and the curse of the great sage which accounted for my birth in an alligator's womb has come to an end. This fellow, O monkey chief, is no hermit but a terrible demon. Believe my words to be true. So saying, the celestial nymph left for her abode in heaven, and Hanumanji immediately returned to the demon. Said the monkey, "First receive, holy sir, your fee as my spiritual preceptor, and after that impart to me the sacred formula." Hanumanji then twisted his tail round the hermit's head and knocked him down, and he appeared in his natural demoniac form at the moment of his death, and gave up the ghost while muttering, "Ramji, Ramji." Hanumanji was delighted at heart to hear this name and proceeded on his journey. He found the mountain but failed to single out the herb prescribed by Sushena. He therefore lost no time in uprooting the mount itself. Holding up the mountain in his hand, Hanumanji darted back through the air while it was yet night and happened to pass over the city of Ayodhya. Bharat, who kept vigil at night ever since his return from Chitrakoot, espied a colossal figure cursing through the air, and thinking it to be some demon, drew his bow to the ear and struck him with a headless shaft. Struck by the dart, Hanumanji dropped unconscious to the ground, crying, "Ramji, Ramji, O Lord of the Raghus." The moment Bharat heard these pleasing words, he rushed and came prostrate by the side of the monkey. Seeing the monkey in swoon, the prince clasped him to his bosom and tried every means to bring him back to consciousness, but in vain. With a sad look in his face and much distressed at heart and his eyes full of tears, he spoke the following words: "The self-same Providence who alienated me from Sri Ramji has also inflicted this terrible suffering on me. If in thought, word and deed I cherish sincere devotion to Sri Ramji's lotus feet, and if the Lord of the Raghus is kindly disposed towards me, may this monkey be relieved of all exhaustion and pain." As soon as these words entered his ears, the monkey chief arose and sat up, crying, "Glory, all glory to the Lord of Kaushala." A thrill of joy ran through his body and tears rushed to his eyes as Bharat took and clasped the monkey to his bosom. His heart overflowed with love at the very thought of Sri Ramji, that glory of the Raghus race. Tell me, dear friend, if all is well with Sri Ramji, the fountain of joy, as well as with his younger brother Lakshman and my mother Janki ji, Janakji's daughter. The monkey chief told him in brief all that had happened, and Bharat felt much distressed to hear it, and his heart was filled with remorse. "Oh me, Good heavens, why should I have been born into this world at all, if I could not be of any service to the Lord? But realizing the adverse circumstances, the gallant and mighty prince recollected himself and addressed Hanumanji again. You will be delayed in your journey, and nothing will avail after daybreak. Therefore, ascend my arrow, mountain and all, and I will send you straight into the presence of the All-Merciful. Hanumanji's pride was tickled when he heard these words. How will the arrow fly with my weight, he thought. Then recalling Shri Ramji's glory, he bowed at Bharat's feet and spoke with joined palms. Cherishing the thought of your majesty, my lord, I will go swiftly. So saying and obtaining leave of Bharat, Hanumanji bowed at his feet and sped on. As he journeyed forth, the son of the winged god extolled to himself again and again Bharat's strength of arm, amiability and goodness, as well as his boundless devotion to the Lord's feet. Now, there on Suvela, Sri Ramji uttered words befitting a mortal as he looked at Lakshman. Although it is now past midnight, Hanuman has not yet turned up. Sri Ramji raised his younger brother and clasped him to his bosom. Brother, you could never bear to see me in distress, since your disposition has always been so tender. On my account, you left both father and mother and exposed yourself to the cold, the heat, and the winds of the forest. Where is that old love now, brother, that you refuse to get up even on hearing my lament? Had I known that I would lose my brother in the forest, I would never have obeyed even my father's command. Sons, riches, wives, houses, and kinsfolk in this world repeatedly come and go, but a real brother cannot be had again in this world. Ponder this in your mind and arise, my dear brother. As a bird is utterly miserable without wings, a serpent without its head jewel, and a noble elephant without its trunk, so is my life without you, my brother, in case stupid fate compels me to survive. With what face shall I return to Ayodhya after sacrificing a beloved brother for the sake of my wife? I would rather have suffered obloquy in the world for my inability to recover my wife, for after all, the loss of a wife is not a serious loss. Now, however, my unfeeling and stony heart will endure both that obloquy and the deep anguish of your loss, my son. Your mother's only son, you are the sole prop of her life. Yet she took you by the hand and entrusted you to me, knowing that I would make you happy in every way and that I am your greatest well-wisher. What answer shall I give her when I go back? Why should you not get up and advise me, my brother? Thus lamented the dispeller of sorrow in diverse ways, and tears flowed from his eyes which resembled the petals of a lotus. Umaji, continues Lord Shivji, the Lord of the Raghus, is one without a second and indivisible. He exhibited the ways of human being only because he is so compassionate to his devotees. The hosts of monkeys that surrounded the Lord were distressed to hear the Lord's frantic wailing. Presently arrived Hanumanji like a heroic strain in the midst of pathos. Transported with joy, Sri Ramji embraced Hanumanji, for the Lord is exceedingly grateful by nature and supremely wise. The physician Sushena then immediately applied the remedy, and Lakshman cheerfully rose and sat up. The Lord clasped his brother to his heart, and the whole host of bears and monkeys was rejoiced. Hanumanji took the physician back to Lanka in the same way he had brought him the previous night. When the 10-headed monster heard this news, he beat his head in utter despair again and again. In sore perplexity, he called on Kumbhakaran, his younger brother, and succeeded in waking him up by using all sorts of devices. Having woken and sat up, he looked like death himself in corporeal body. Kumbhakarna asked, "Tell me, brother, why do you look so withered up?" The haughty Ravan told him the whole story as to how he had carried off Sita. "Dear brother, the monkeys have killed all the demons and killed the greatest warriors, Durmukha, Devantaka, the enemy of gods, Narantaka, the devourer of men, the mighty champions Atikaya of enormous size, and Akampana, who never trembles in fear, and other heroes like Mahodra, the big-bellied, so staunch in battle, have all fallen." On hearing the words of his 10-headed brother, Kumbhakarna felt very sorry. "Having carried off the mother of the universe, O fool, you still expect good out of it. You have not acted well, O demon king, and now why have you come and woke me up? Yet, abandoning pride, worship Sri Ramji and you will be blessed. Can the Lord of the Raghus, O 10-headed Ravan, be a man who has couriers like Hanumanji? Alas, brother, you acted unwisely in that you did not break this news to me earlier. You have courted war with the divinity who has for his servants gods like Shivji and Vishnuji the creator. I would have confided to you the secret which the sage Naradji had once imparted to me, but the time has passed. Squeeze me, brother, in close embrace now, so that I may go and bless my eyes with the sight of the Lord, who has a swarthy complexion and lotus-like eyes, and who relieves the threefold agony of his devotees." As he thought of Sri Ramji's beauty and virtue, he forgot himself for a moment. In the meantime, Ravan requisitioned for his consumption myriads of jars full of wine and a whole herd of buffaloes. Having feasted on the buffaloes and drunk of the wine, Kumbhakarna rode like a crash of lightning. Heavily drunk and full of passion for war, he sallied forth from the fort without any troops. When Bhivishanji saw him, he came forward and falling at his feet, told him his name. Kumbhakarna in his turn lifted his younger brother and clasped him to his bosom. He was delighted at heart to know that his brother was a devotee of Sri Ramji, the Lord of the Raghus. "Dear brother, Ravan spurned me with his foot when I gave him a most salutary advice and told him my view. Disgusted with such treatment, I came away to Sri Ramji, and the Lord's heart was drawn towards me when he perceived my distress. Listen, my son, Ravan is in the clutches of death and would not listen even to the best advice at this stage. Thrice blessed are you, Vibhishan, you have proved to be the ornament of the demon race. Brother, you have brought glory to our line by adoring Sri Ramji, that ocean of beauty and felicity. In thought, word and deed, you should guilelessly worship Sri Ramji, who is staunch in battle. Now leave me, for doomed as I am to death, brother, I can no longer distinguish between friend and foe." On hearing the words of his brother Kumbhakarna, Vibhishanji turned back and came into the presence of Sri Ramji, the ornament of the three spheres. "My lord, here comes Kumbhakarna, possessed of a body huge as a mountain and staunch in battle." The moment the mighty monkeys heard this, they rushed forth, crying with joy. They plucked up trees and mountains and hurled them against Kumbhakarna, gnashing their teeth all the while. The bears and monkeys threw myriads of mountain peaks at him each time, but neither he felt daunted in spirit nor did he stir from his position in spite of the best efforts on the part of the monkeys to push him back. Even like an elephant pelted with the fruits of the sun plant. Thereupon Hanumanji struck him with his fist and he fell to the earth, beating his head in great confusion. Rising again, he hit Hanumanji back, and the latter whirled round and immediately dropped to the ground. Next, he overthrew Nal and Neel upon the ground and knocked down the warriors here and there and everywhere. The monkey host stampeded in utter dismay. None dare face him. Having rendered unconscious Angad and the other principal monkey, including Sugriv, Kumbhakarn, who was of unbound might, nay, the very perfection of strength, pressed the king of the monkeys under his arm and went off. Umaji, continues Lord Shivji, the Lord of the Raghus, played the part of a human being in the same way as Garuda, the mount of Bhagwan Vishnuji, would sport in the company of snakes. Otherwise, how could he who devours death himself with the mere knitting of his brows engage with any grace in such a conflict as this? He will thereby spread his fame, which will not only sanctify the whole world, but will undoubtedly take across the ocean of mundane existence the people who sing it. Now Hanumanji's unconsciousness ceased, and he woke and presently began to look about for Sugriv. Meanwhile, Sugriv too recovered from his swoon and slipped out of Kumbhakarn's grips, who had taken him for dead and consequently loosened his grip. Kumbhakarn discovered his escape only when Sugriv bit off the monster's nose and ears and ascended into the air roaring. The demon caught Sugriv by the foot, and having thus secured him, dashed him against the ground. Sugriv, however, rose with remarkable agility and hit his adversary back. The mighty hero then returned into the Lord's presence, shouting, "Glory, glory, all glory to the merciful Lord." Kumbhakarn felt sick at heart when he realized that he had been deprived of his nose and ears, and turned back in fury. The monkey host was horror-stricken when they saw the monster, who was frightful by nature and looked more so in the absence of his nose and ears. Raising a shout of "Glory, glory, all glory to the jewel of Raghu's race," the monkeys rushed forward and rained upon him all at once a volley of rocks and trees. Maddened with the lust of battle, Kumbhakarn marched against the enemy like death himself, furious with rage. He seized and devoured the myriads of monkeys that looked like swarms of locusts entering a mountain cave. Seizing many more millions, he crushed them against his body, and millions he levigated between his palms and mixed with the dust on the ground. Multitudes of bears and monkeys escaped through his mouth, nostrils, and ears and ran away. Intoxicated with the frenzy of battle, the demon stood in a challenging mood, as though the Creator had placed the whole universe at his disposal, and he was going to devour it. All great warriors scuttled away from the battlefield and would not return under any persuasion whatsoever. They could neither see with their eyes nor hear any call. The demon host also sallied forth when they learned that Kumbhakarn had dispersed the monkey army. Sri Ramji saw the discomfiture of his forces and further perceived all kinds of enemy reinforcements pouring in. "Listen, Sugriv, Vibhishan and Lakshman. Take care of the army while I test the might and manpower of this wretch," said the lotus-eyed Lord. Taking his famous bow, known by the name of Shang, in his hand, and with a quiver fastened to his waist, the Lord of the Raghus went forth to crush the enemy's ranks. The Lord first twanged his bow. The sound was so piercing that the enemy host was deafened to hear it. Shri Ramji, of unfailing resolve, discharged 100,000 arrows, which sped like winged cobras. Numerous arrows flew in every direction. Fierce demon warriors began to be mowed down. Feet, chest, head, and arms were dismembered, while many a hero was cut into 100 pieces. Whirling round and round, the wounded fell to the ground. The champions among them rose, and recovering themselves would join battle again. They thundered like clouds, even as the arrows struck them, while many of them took to flight at the very sight of the terrible arrows. Headless trunks rushed fiercely on with the cries of "Seize! Seize! Kill! Kill!" In a trice the Lord's arrow mowed down the terrible demon host. All the arrows then made their way back into Sri Ramji's quiver. When Kumbhakarn perceived and realized that the demon army had been wiped out in an instant, the formidable hero flew into a violent rage and gave a grim roar as that of a lion, the king of beasts. In his fury, he tore up mountains by the roots and dashed them upon detachments of mighty monkey warriors. The Lord saw the huge mountains coming and shattered them with his arrows into dust as it were. The Lord of the Raghus once more pulled the string of his bow and indignantly discharged a volley of his exceedingly terrible shafts. The arrows entered and passed through his body like flashes of lightning, disappearing into the cloud. Blood gushing out from his dark figure resembled spouts of red ochre shooting from a mountain of soot. Perceiving him in fluster, bears and monkeys dashed forward. The monster, however, laughed when the monkeys drew near. He burst into a terrible roar and, seizing millions and millions of monkeys, dashed them to the ground like a huge elephant, swearing by his 10-headed brother all the while. Hosts of bears and monkeys fled like flocks of sheep at the sight of a wolf. The monkeys and bears, O Bhavaniji, turned tall in terror, crying in a piteous voice, "Yonder demon is like unto a famine, which threatens to visit this land in the shape of the monkey host. Therefore, O Ramji, slayer of Khara, the cloud laden with the water of compassion, reliever of the suppliant's agony, save us, protect us." The moment the Lord heard the pathetic words, he advanced to meet him, putting his bow and arrows in order, placing his army in the rear. The most powerful Ramji marched ahead, full of indignation. Pulling the string of his bow, he fitted 100 arrows to it. They flew and disappeared into the demon's body. Even as the arrows struck him, the demon rushed forth, burning with rage. The mountains staggered and the earth shook as he ran. He tore up a rock, but the glory of Raghu's race cut off the arm that bore it. He then rushed forward with the rock in his left hand, but the Lord struck off even that arm to the ground. Thus, shorn of his arms, the wretched resembled Mount Mandara without its wings. He cast a fierce look on the Lord as if ready to devour all the three spheres. With a most terrible yell, he rushed forth with his mouth wide open. The Siddhas and gods in the heavens shouted in great alarm, "Oh, alas, dear me!" Perceiving the gods much alarmed, the All-Merciful pulled the string of his bow right up to his ear and blocked the demon's mouth with the flight of his arrows. Yet he did not fall to the ground, most powerful as he was. With his mouth full of arrows, he rushed forward like a living quiver of death himself. Then the Lord in his wrath took a sharp arrow and struck his head right off his body. The head dropped in front of his 10-headed brother, who was filled with agony at its sight like a snake that has lost its crest jewel. The earth sunk beneath the weight of the terrible trunk that still sprinted there. Thereupon the Lord cut it into two. The two pieces fell to the ground like a pair of mountains dropped from the heavens, crushing beneath them monkeys, bears, and demons alike. His soul entered the Lord's mouth in the form of a mass of light, to the astonishment of gods, sages, and all. The gods sounded their kettle drums in great exultation, extolled the Lord, and rained down flowers in profusion. Having prayed to the Lord, all the gods went their way. Just at that moment arrived the celestial sage Naradji. Standing high in the air, he sang Sri Hariji's praises in a delightful, heroic strain, which pleased the Lord's soul. The sage departed with the words, "Pray, dispatch this wretch Ravan quickly." Sri Ramji shone forth on the field of battle. The Lord of the Raghus, the king of Kaushala, who was matchless in strength, shone resplendent on the field of battle in the midst of bears and monkeys. With drops of perspiration on his face, his lotus eyes turned red, and his person specked with particles of blood, and both his hands busy playing with his bow and arrow. Even Sesha, the serpent god, says Tulsidas Ji, could not describe the Lord's beauty despite his numerous tongues. Sri Ramji vouchsafed a palace in his own abode to a wild demon who was a mine of impurities. Girijaji, continues Lord Shivji, dull-witted are those men who adore him not. At the close of the day, the two contending armies retired from the battlefield. The battle had proved exceedingly strenuous even to the stoutest warrior, but the monkey host waxed stronger by Sri Ramji's grace, even as fire blazes up when fed with straw. The ranks of the demons were thinning night and day like merit, which is exhausted by speaking of one's good deeds with one's own lips. The 10-headed monster made much lamentation, clasping his brother's head to his bosom again and again. The women wept and beat their breast with their hands, paying tributes to his extraordinary majesty and strength. At that juncture, Meghnad, Ravan's eldest son, came and consoled his father by narrating a number of reassuring stories. See my heroism tomorrow. I need not make any pretentious statement just now. I have had no occasion to show you, dear father, the strength which I acquired along with the chariot from my beloved deity. While he rattled on in this manner, the day broke, and swarms of monkeys besieged all the four gates. On this side ranged the monkey and bear warriors terrible as death, while on the other side stood the demons exceedingly staunch in battle. Every champion fought for the victory of his own camp. The battle, O Garudaji, says Kakabhusandiji, defied all description. Mounting his charmed car, Meghnad ascended into the air, roared with a terrible laugh which struck the monkey host with terror. He discharged a volley of lances, pikes, swords, and scimitars, as well as axes, bludgeons, and stones, and other missiles and weapons of every description, terrible as a thunderbolt, and further rained down shafts in profusion. The sky was thickly covered with arrows on all sides, as though the clouds poured in torrents in the month of Bhadrapad, when the constellation Megha, the 10th in order of the 27 nakshatras, is in the ascendant. The cries of "Seize! Seize! Kill! Kill!" filled every ear, but nobody knew who it was that struck them. Snatching up rocks and trees, the monkeys sprang into the air, but they could not see him and returned sore disappointed. Meanwhile, by his delusive power, Meghnad had turned every rugged valley, path and mountain cave into a veritable aviary of arrows. The monkeys were confounded and did not know where to turn. They felt helpless, like so many mandaras thrown into prison, as it were by Indraji. The son of the winged god, Angad, Nal, Neel, and all the other mighty heroes were completely discomfited by him. Again he assailed with shafts Lakshman, Sugriv, and Vibhishan ji and pierced their bodies through and through. Then he confronted the Lord of the Raghus himself. The arrows he let fly turned into serpents even as they struck Sri Ramji. The slayer of Khara, who is all independent, infinite and immutable, the one without a second, was overpowered by the serpent's coils. Like an actor, he plays many a part, he, the one, ever free and omnipotent Lord. It was in order to invest the battle with a glory of its own that the Lord allowed himself to be bound by a snare of serpents, even though the gods were dismayed at this sight. Girijaji, continues Lord Shivji, is it ever possible that the Lord, who is the all-pervading abode of the universe and whose name, when repeated, enables the hermits to cut asunder the bonds of existence, should fall in bondage? The doing of Sri Ramji, when appearing in an embodied form, Bhavaniji, cannot be logically interpreted by the power of reason or speech. Realizing this, those who know the truth about him and are full of dispassion adore Sri Ramji, discarding all theological speculation. Having thus thrown the monkey host into confusion, Ghananand, a synonym for Meghnad, at last revealed himself and began to pour abuses. Jambavant said, "Remain standing a while, O wretch." When he heard this, his anger knew no bound. "Fool, I spared you only on account of your age, and yet you have had the audacity to challenge me, O vile creature." So saying, he hurled his glittering trident. Jambavant, however, caught it in his hand and, darting forward, struck Meghnad in the chest with it so vehemently that the enemy of gods reeled and fell to the ground. Once again, Jambavant in his fury took Meghnad by the foot and, swinging him around, dashed him against the ground, and thus showed him his strength. By virtue of the boon granted to him by the Creator, however, he died not for all his killing. Thereupon Jambavant seized him by the foot and tossed him into Lanka. At this end, the celestial sage Naradji dispatched Garuda, who took no time in reaching by the side of Sri Ramji. The king of birds seized and devoured the whole swarm of snakes created by Meghnad's demoniac power. The charm was thus dispelled, and all the divisions of the monkey host rejoiced again. Armed with rocks, trees and stones and claws, the monkeys rushed forth in their fury, while the demons took to their heels in utter confusion and climbed up the fort. When Meghnad recovered from his swoon, he felt much ashamed to find his father before him. He speedily betook himself to a convenient mountain cave and resolved to perform a sacrifice which would render him invincible. At this end, Vibhishan ji approached the Lord and told him his considered view. "Listen, my Lord of incomparable might and generosity. The wicked Meghnad, who is a past master in creating illusions and the scourge of heaven, is performing an unholy sacrifice. If my Lord, the sacrifice is allowed to be completed, he will not then be speedily conquered." The Lord of the Raghus was highly gratified to hear this and summoned Angad and many other monkeys. "Go with Lakshman, brother-in-law, and wreak the sacrifice. And it is for you, Lakshman, to kill him in battle. I am much distressed to find the gods in terror. You must finish him by force of your wit might, or one way or other. Mark me, brother, the demon must be put an end to. And Jambavant, Sugriv, and Vibhishan, you three must keep by his side with your regiment." The Lord of Kaushala laughed again and again to see all the monkeys, a motley host indeed. the Lord of the Raghus showered his grace on all by casting a look at them and spoke to them in endearing terms. It was through your might that I succeeded first in killing Ravan and then in crowning Vibhishan. Now return all of you to your several homes. Keep your thought fixed on me and fear none. The monkeys were all overcome with affection to hear these words and reverently replied with joined palms, O Lord, whatever you say well becomes of you, but we get mystified on hearing your words. You are the sovereign of all the three spheres, O Lord of the Raghus. Knowing our humble state, you took us under your protection, but we are overwhelmed with shame to hear such words from the lips of our master, that is yourself. Can a swarm of mosquitoes ever help Garuda, the king of the birds? The bears and monkeys were overpowered with emotion when they saw what was in the mind of the Lord, that is, his reluctance to take them to Ayodhya. They had no inclination to return home. But in obedience to the Lord's command, the monkeys and bears all dispersed with a mixed feeling of joy and sorrow, and with many a humble submission, enshrining Sri Ramji's image in their heart. The monkey king Sugriv, Neel, Jambavant, the lord of the bears, Angad, Nal, Hanumanji, and all the other mighty generals of the monkey host, together with Vibhishanji, were too overwhelmed with emotion to utter a word. With eyes full of tears, they stood facing Sri Ramji and gazing intently on him. Perceiving their excessive love, the Lord of the Raghus mounted the aerial car along with Sitaji and Lakshman and took them all up into the car. He mentally bowed his head at the feet of the Brahmanas and directed the car to move towards the north. An uproarious noise burst forth as the car took off, all shouting, "Glory to the hero of Raghu's line." The car was provided with a lofty and charming throne. The Lord took his seat on it along with Sri Sitaji. Accompanied by his spouse, Sri Ramji shone forth like a cloud with lightning on a peak of Mount Meru. The splendid car moved with all speed on its way to the joy of the gods, who rained down flowers on it. A most delightful cool breeze breathed soft and fragrant. The water of the ocean, lakes and streams became transparent, and auspicious omens occurred on all sides. Nay, everyone felt cheerful at heart. The whole expanse of the sky, including the four quarters, was clear. Said the hero of Raghu's line, "Mark, Sita, it was on this spot that Lakshman slew Meghnad, the crown prince of Lanka. Here lie on the battlefield mighty demons killed by Hanuman and Angad. And here fell the two brothers Kumbhakarn and Ravan, the tormentor of gods and sages. It was here that I had a bridge constructed and also installed a symbol of the blissful Lord Shivji." So saying, the all-merciful Sri Ramji and Sitaji both made obeisance to Shambhuji. Every spot in the woods where the ocean of compassion had either taken up his abode or rested a while was then pointed out by the Lord to Janakji's daughter and mentioned by name. Forthwith, the aerial car reached the most charming Dandaka forest, the abode of many a great sage like Kumbhaja, the Jar-born Agastya, and others. Sri Ramji visited the hermitages of all. After receiving the blessings of all these sages, the Lord of the universe arrived at Chitrakoot, and having gratified the sages there, the aerial car departed thence with all speed. Sri Ramji next pointed out to Janakji's daughter the beautiful Yamuna that washes away the impurities of the Kali Yuga. Thereafter, they espied the holy Ganga, the celestial stream, and Sri Ramji said, "Sita, make obeisance." Now a look at Prayag. the king of all sacred places, whose very sight drives away sins committed through a myriad lives. Again, look at the most holy Triveni, the confluence of the Ganga, Yamuna and the subterranean Saraswati, the dispeller of grief and a ladder to Sri Hariji's abode. Now see the most sacred city of Ayodhya that relieves the threefold agony and uproots the melody of transmigration. The gracious Ramji and Sitaji both made obeisance to Ayodhya. Tears rushed to his eyes, every hair on his body stood erect, and the Lord felt delighted again and again. The Lord then landed at the Triveni and with much joy bathed in the confluence. He bestowed a variety of gifts on the Brahmanas, and the monkeys too joined him. The Lord instructed Hanumanji as follows: "Go ahead of us to the city of Ayodhya in the guise of a religious student. Tell Bharat the news of our welfare and then come back with all the news about him." The son of the wind god immediately left, and the Lord then called on Bharadwaj. The sage offered him all kinds of worship, and after hymning his praises further, gave him his blessing. The Lord in his turn adored the sage's feet with joined palms, mounted the car and went on his journey. At this end, the Nishad chief heard that the Lord had come, and exclaiming, "The boat! Where is the boat?" summoned his people. Meanwhile, the aerial car flew across the celestial stream and landed on the bank adjoining Srirangvirpur in obedience to the Lord's command. Then Sitaji offered all kinds of worship to the celestial stream and threw herself at the feet of the goddess presiding over the stream. In gladness of soul, Ganga pronounced her blessing. "May you enjoy a happy married life without a break, O fair lady." Overwhelmed with love, Guha ran to meet the Lord as soon as he heard of his landing and approached his master, full of ecstatic joy. Perceiving the Lord accompanied by Videhaji's daughter, he fell flat on the ground, oblivious of his own existence. The Lord of the Raghus felt overjoyed to see his excessive fondness. He took and clasped him to his bosom. The all-merciful Lord of Ramji, the wisest among the wise, took and clasped him to his bosom, and seating him very close to him, enquired after his welfare. Guha submitted in reply, "Now all is well with me, for I have behold your lotus feet, worthy of adoration even to Brahmaji and Lord Shankarji. O blissful Ramji, self-sufficient as you are, I simply adore you. O Ramji, I adore you." That Nishad, who was low in every respect, Sri Hariji clasped to his bosom as though he were Bharat himself. A victim of infatuation, this dull-witted Tulsidas, however, has cast out of his mind even such a benign lord. This story of the slayer of Ravan is not only sanctifying, but vouchsafes loving and perpetual devotion to Sri Ramji's feet. Nay, it uproots lust and other evil passions and begets true wisdom, and is gladly swung by gods, the Siddhas and sages. The Lord rewards with everlasting victory, wisdom and worldly prosperity those men of good understanding who listen to the stories relating to the victory of Sri Ramji, the hero of Raghu's line in battle. Ponder well and see for yourself, O my mind, this age of Kali is the very home of impurities. There is nothing to fall back upon in this age other than the name of the illustrious Lord of the Raghus. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Siya Ram. Thus ends the sixth descent into the Manas lake of Sri Ramji's exploits that eradicates all the impurities of the Kali Yuga. My lord, you have no chariot nor any protection either for your body in the shape of armor or for your feet in the shape of shoes. How then can you expect to conquer this mighty hero? Listen, friend, replied the All-Merciful. The chariot which leads one to victory is quite another. Valor and fortitude are the wheels of that chariot, while the truthfulness and good conduct are its enduring banner and standard. Even so, strength, discretion, self-control, and benevolence are its four horses that have been joined to the chariot with the cords of forgiveness, compassion, and evenness of mind. Adoration of God is the expert driver, dispassion the shield, and contentment the sword. Again, charity is the axe, reason the fierce lance, and the highest wisdom the relentless bow. A pure and steady mind is like quiver, while quietude and the various forms of abstinence, yamas, and religious observances, that is niyams, are a sheaf of arrows. Homage to the Brahmanas and to one's own preceptor is an impenetrable coat of mail. There is no other equipment for victory as efficacious as this, my friend. He who owns such a chariot of piety shall have no enemy to conquer anywhere. Listen, O friend of resolute mind, the hero who happens to be in possession of such a strong chariot can conquer even that mighty and invincible foe. Attachment to the world. Hearing the Lord's words, Vibhishanji clasped his lotus feet in joy. You have utilized this opportunity to exhort me, O Ramji, an embodiment of grace and bliss that you are. On that side the 10-headed Ravan threw his challenge, while on this side Angad and Hanumanji invited him to a contest. The demons on the other hand and the bears and monkeys on the other steadily fought, each side swearing by its lord. Brahmaji and the other gods, as well as a number of siddhas and sages, mounted their aerial cars and watched the contest from the heavens. I too, Umaji, continues Lord Shivji, happened to be in that company and witnessed Sri Ramji's exploits replete with martial zeal. The champions of both sides were maddened with a passion for war. The monkeys, however, led the field through the might of Sri Ramji. With shouts of defiance, they closed in single combat, each crushing his adversary and throwing him to the ground. They smote the enemy, hacked him to pieces, clutched him, and dashed him to the ground. Nay, they tore his head off and pelted another with the same. They ripped up bellies, plucked up arms, and seizing the opponent by the foot, dashed him to the ground. The bears buried the demon warriors underground and piled over them large heaps of sand. The gallant monkeys on the battlefield looked like so many infuriated forms of death as they desperately fought against the enemy. Their bodies streaming with blood, the powerful monkey warriors looked like the god of death in fury. Crushing the champions of the demon host, they roared like thunder clouds. They slapped and browbeat their opponents, bit them, and trampled them underfoot. The monkeys and the bears sent out a shrill cry and employed every stratagem to annihilate the miscreant host. They seized and tore open the cheeks, ripped up the bellies, and hung the entrails round their necks, as though the Lord of Prahlad, Bhagwan Narsimhaji, had assumed a multiplicity of forms and spotted on the field of death. The savage cries of seize, smite, cut to pieces, and knock them down filled both heaven and earth. Glory to Sri Ramji, who can actually convert a blade of grass into a thunderbolt and vice versa. When the 10-headed Ravan saw his troops breaking, he mounted his chariot and drawing 10 bows in his 20 arms, turned round, shouting in great fury, "Turn back! Turn back!" The wrath of the 10-headed monster knew no bound as he darted forward. But the monkeys also hurried to confront him, shouting with glee. Taking in their hands trees, stones, and rocks, they hurled them upon him all at once. The rocks broke to pieces the moment they struck his adamantine frame. Ravan, who was maddened with the lust for war and most furious by temperament, flinched but not remained firm as a rock, planting his chariot where it stood. Burning all over with rage, he darted and bullied hither and thither and started crushing the monkey warriors. Many a bear and monkey took to his heel, crying, "Help! Help! Angad and Hanumanji! Save! Save, O Lord Raghuvirji, hero of Raghu's line! This wretch is devouring us like death!" When the monster saw that all the monkeys had fled, he fitted an arrow to each of his 10 bows. Fitting an arrow to each of his bows, he shot a volley of arrows which flew and lodged like winged serpents. The shafts filled all available space on earth as well as in the heavens, including the 8 quarters, so that the monkeys knew not where to go. There was a wild uproar in the ranks of the monkeys and bears, who were sore distressed and cried in anguish, "O hero of Raghu's line, O ocean of mercy, O befriender of the distressed, O Hariji, O savior of mankind." Seeing the distress of his troops, Lakshman fastened the quiver to his waist, and taking the bow in his hand, he bowed his head at Shri Ramji's feet and sallied forth full of rage. You are making the monkeys and bears your target, O wild wretch! Look at me! I am your death. It is you whom I have been looking for, you slayer of my son. Today I will soothe my heart by killing you. So saying, he discharged a flight of fierce arrows, but Lakshman shivered them into 100 pieces each. Nay, Ravan hurled upon him myriads of other missiles, but Lakshman foiled them all by reducing them to particles as small as sesamum seeds. Again, Lakshman assailed him with his own shafts, smashing his chariot and killing the charioteer. Nay, each of his 10 heads he transfixed with 100 arrows, which seemed like serpents boring their way into the peaks of a mountain. With 100 arrows more he struck him in the breast. He fell senseless to the ground. On regaining his consciousness, the mighty demon rose again and hurled a lance that had been bestowed on him by Brahmaji, the creator. That fierce lance, the gift of Brahmaji, struck Lord Ananta, that is Lakshmanji, right in the breast, and the hero dropped to the ground full of agony. The 10-headed monster tried to lift the prince and carry him off, but the glory of the demon's matchless strength proved ineffective. How foolish it was on the part of Ravan to have sought to lift him, on one of whose 1,000 heads rest all the spheres of the universe like a mere grain of sand. He little knew that he was no other than the Lord of the 3 spheres. The son of the wind god, who perceived this, rushed forward, speaking harsh words. But even as the monkey came near, the monster struck him a terrible blow with his fist. Hanumanji sank on his knees but did not fall to the ground. Recovering himself, he rose in exceeding wrath and struck Ravan a blow with his fist. The demon fell like a mountain struck by lightning. When the spell of his swoon was over and consciousness returned to him, he began to admire the monkey's enormous strength. "Shame on my valor and shame on myself if you are still alive, you enemy of gods." So saying, Hanumanji carried Lakshmanji off to Sri Ramji. The 10-headed monster was amazed at this sight. Said the hero of Raghu's line, "Bear in mind, brother, that you are the devourer of death and the savior of the gods. Immediately, on hearing these words, the gracious Prince Lakshman arose and sat up, while the fierce lance vanished into the heavens. Taking his bow and arrows again, he darted and came post-haste in front of the enemy. With great dispatch, Lakshman smashed Ravan's chariot again and struck down his charioteer, who felt writhing with pain. Ravan, whose heart he transfixed with 100 arrows, fell to the ground, much distressed. Another charioteer came and laid him in his own chariot and immediately took him away to Lanka, while Lakshman, Sri Ramji's glorious brother, bowed at Lord's feet again. At the other end, the 10-headed monster, on coming to himself, set to perform some sacrifice. In his perversity and rank ignorance, the fool sought to gain victory even by antagonizing Sri Ramji. At this end, Vibhishanji got all the information and hastening to the Lord of the Raghus, apprised him of everything. My lord, Ravan is busy with a sacrificial performance, and if he completes it, the wretch will never die. Therefore, my lord, dispatch some valiant monkeys at once, so that they may wreak his sacrifice, and the 10-headed monster be compelled to return. As soon as the day broke, the Lord sent out his champions, Hanumanji, Angad, and others, who all rushed forward. In a mere spot, the monkeys sprang up to the fort of Lanka and fearlessly entered Ravan's palace. The moment they saw him engaged in a sacrifice, all the monkeys grew wildly furious. You shameless wretch, having run away home from the battle, you have sat down here and feigned meditation. So saying, Angad struck him with his foot. But the fool did not even look at them, his mind being absorbed in the pursuit of his own end. When he refused to look at them, the monkeys in their fury bit him with their teeth and kicked him. His wives too they seized by their locks and dragged out of the doors, while they cried most piteously. Then at last he rose, furious as death, and catching hold of the monkeys by their legs, he threw them away. Meanwhile, when he saw that the monkeys had wrecked his sacrifice, he felt discomfited at heart. Having wrecked his sacrifice, the monkeys safely returned to the Lord of the Raghus, while the demon Ravan set out ablaze with fury, abandoning all hope of life. Evil omens of most fearful nature occurred to him even as he went. Vultures flew and perched on his heads. Being in the jaws of death, he paid no heed to anyone and exclaimed, "Beat the drums of war!" The demon host appeared endless as it marched on with its myriads of elephants, chariots, foot soldiers, and horsemen. The wicked demons rushed to face the Lord like a swarm of moths darting towards fire. At this end, the gods prayed to the Lord, "This fellow Ravan has inflicted terrible suffering on us. Play with him no more, Ramji. Videhaji's daughter Sitaji is feeling most disconsolable." The Lord smiled to hear the god's prayer. The hero of Raghu's line rose and put his arrows in order. The matted lock on his head had been tightly coiled and were interlaced with flowers. With his ruddy eyes and body dark as rain cloud, he ravished the eyes of the whole world. He fastened his quiver to a piece of cloth girt round his loins and took in his hand formidable shangbow. The Lord took the shangbow in his hand and fastened to his waist the beautiful quiver with an inexhaustible stock of arrows. He had a pair of muscular arms and a charming and broad chest, which was adorned with the print of the Brahmana Bhriguji's foot. When the Lord, says Tulsidas-ji, commenced failing the bow and arrow with his hands, the whole universe, including the elephants guarding the 8 quarters, the divine tortoise, the serpent god Sesha, and the earth with its oceans and mountains, began to tremble. The gods rejoiced to see his beauty and rained down flowers in an endless shower, exclaiming, "Glory, glory, all glory to the fountain of mercy, the storehouse of beauty, strength, and goodness." Meanwhile, arrived the vast demon host with its overcrowded ranks. The moment the monkey warriors saw the army, they advanced to meet it like the masses of clouds that gather at the time of universal destruction. Numberless swords and claymores flashed like gleams of lightning from every direction. The shrill cries of the elephants and horses and the rattling sound of the chariots resembled the terrible thundering of clouds. Myriads of monkeys' tails stretched across the heavens like an array of magnificent rainbows appearing in the sky. The dust rose in thick columns like streams of water in the air, and the arrows shot forth in an endless shower like raindrops. Mountains hurled from either side crashed like repeated strokes of lightning. The Lord of the Raghus, in his fury, let fly arrows in showers, which straightway wounded the demon crew. The demon warriors shrieked with pain as the arrow struck them, and swinging round and round, they fell to the ground here and there and everywhere. Streaming with blood, the wounded demons looked like mountains with their large cascades, and the blood ran in the form of river, the terror of cowards. A most unholy river of blood that smote recreants with terror ran across the battlefield. With the two armies for its banks, the chariots for its intervening sands, and their wheels for its whirlpools, it was a frightful flood indeed. The foot soldiers, and even so elephants, horses, donkeys, and other mounts of all kinds, more than one could count, that floated on the river, represented the various aquatic creatures. The arrows, lances, and iron clubs swept by it stood for its serpents. The bows borne along the current represented its waves, and the shields stood for its many tortoises. Warriors fell here and there like the trees on its banks, and the abundant marrow of their bones represented its scum. Dastards shuddered at its very sight, while champions were delighted at heart to see it. Spirits, ghouls and goblins, and even so frightful genii with a long shaggy mass of hair, and pramats, that is Shivji's own attendants, took their plunge in it. Crows and kites flew off with the human arms, which they tore from one another and ate themselves. Some said, "What a pity, fools, that you should continue to suffer from want even in such plenty." Wounded warriors fallen on the banks groaned like the moribund lying all around, half in and half out of water, on the bank of a sacred river, lake, etc., in order to ensure that they may breathe their last while their body is being washed by the sacred water, since such a death is accounted as highly beneficial to the spirit of the dying man. Standing on its banks, vultures tore the entrails of the dead like fishermen angling with rapt attention. Many a dead warrior floated down with birds perched on them, as if the latter were enjoying a game of boating on the river. The yoginis, female attendants of goddess Durgaji, took to storing blood in skulls, while female sprints and sprites danced in the air. Even so, Chamundas, another class of female attendants of Durgaji, sang songs in various strains, clashing the skulls of dead warriors like so many pairs of cymbals. Herds of jackals snapped their teeth as they tore the dead, feasted upon them and yelled, and when surfeited, they snarled. Myriads of headless trunks trotting along the battlefield, which the heads lying on the ground shouted, "Victory! Victory!" The heads shouted "Victory! Victory!" while the headless trunks darted wildly about. Birds got entangled in the skulls even as they contended with one another, while champions overthrew their rivals. Imperious through Shri Ramji's strength, the monkeys crushed the demon crew, and mortally struck by Shri Ramji's flight of arrows, the champions lay in eternal sleep on the field of death. Ravan thought within himself, the demons have been wiped out and I am left alone, while the monkeys are still numerous. Let me therefore create illusions without number. When the gods saw that the Lord was on foot, they were exceedingly troubled at heart. Indraji, the Lord of heaven, forthwith dispatched his own chariot, which Matali, Indraji's charioteer, gladly brought there. It was a heavenly and unique car, which was all splendor. The king of Kaushalpura, Ayodhya, gladly mounted it. It was driven by 4 high-spirited and charming horses, which knew no decay or death and flew as fast as thought. The monkeys rushed forward with renewed vigor when they saw the Lord of the Raghus mounted on a chariot. When Ravan felt that the monkeys' onset was irresistible, he took to creating illusions. The elusive creation did not touch the Lord of the Raghus, while the monkeys, nay, even Lakshman, took it for real. The monkeys saw among a large demon host a number of Ramjis and as many Lakshmans. The monkeys and bears were much terrified at heart to see numerous Ramjis and Lakshmans. All of them, including Lakshman, stood gazing like the figures in a picture wherever they were. The Lord of Kaushala smiled to see his army at a nonplus. He fitted an arrow to his bow, and in a trice Sri Hariji dispersed the delusion to the delight of the whole monkey host. Sri Ramji then cast his glance on all and spoke in meaningful words. Watch now my duel with Ravan, for all of you, my heroes, are extremely tired. So saying, the Lord of the Raghus bowed his head at the Brahmana's lotus feet, even as he urged forward his chariot. Thereupon, Ravan felt much enraged at heart and darted to meet him, challenging him in a thundering voice. Listen, hermit, I am not like one of those warriors whom you have vanquished in battle. My name is Ravan, whose glory is known all the world over, and whose prison holds within its walls the regents of the spears. You slew Khara, Dushna, and Virad, and killed poor Bali even as a hunter would shoot his game. Nay, you wiped out a host of demon champions and killed even Kumbhakarn and Meghnath. Today I will wreak vengeance on you for all this, unless, O Prince, you flee away from the battle. Today I will surely give you over to death, for it is the relentless Ravan whom you have to deal with. Hearing his foul talk, the All-Merciful took him as doomed to death and smilingly replied as follows. True, true is all your greatness, but prate no more. Show your valor if you can. Do not ruin your reputation by bragging. Pray, excuse me and listen to a sound maxim. There are 3 types of men in this world, those resembling the rose, the mango, and the bread tree respectively. The one gives flowers alone, the second flowers and fruit both, and the third yields fruit alone. Even so, the one talks, the second talks as well as does, while the third does, but never goes about proclaiming it. Ravan heartily laughed when he heard Sri Ramji's words. Oh, you teach me wisdom. You did not shrink from waging war against me then. Now it seems you hold your life very dear. Having uttered these taunting words, Ravan furiously began to discharge arrows like so many thunderbolts. Shafts of various designs flew and filled all the quarters, nay, every corner of the earth and heavens. The hero of Raghu's line let fly a fiery dart, and in a moment the demon's bolts were all consumed. Ravan ground his teeth out of frustration and hurled a fierce lance, but the Lord sent it back along with his arrow. The demon then cast a cloud of discs and tridents, but the Lord frustrated them by tearing them as under without any exertion. Ravan's arrows proved as futile as the schemes of the wicked invariably are. Then with 100 arrows he struck Shri Ramji's charioteer, who fell to the ground crying, "Victory to Shri Ramji!" Shri Ramji took compassion and lifted up the driver. He was now stirred up with a terrible fury. When the Lord of the Raghus encountered the enemy on the battlefield full of rage, the arrows in his quiver vied with one another in their endeavor to shoot forth. The man-eating demons were all seized with terror at the sound of the most awful twang of his bow. Mandodari's heart quaked. The ocean, the tortoise supporting the globe, the earth and the mountains trembled, and the elephants guarding the quarters squealed and clutched the globe with their tusks. The god smiled at this amusing sight. Shri Ramji drew the bowstring right up to his ear and let fly his terrible darts, which sped forth vibrating like so many serpents. The arrows flew like winged serpents. At the first onset they killed Ravan's charioteer and horses. Then smashing the car, they tore off his ensign and flags. Even though his strength had inwardly failed him, he roared aloud, and immediately, mounting another car, ground his teeth and hurled missiles and other weapons of every description. All his efforts, however, failed like those of a man whose mind is ever intent on harming others. Then Ravan hurled forth 10 pikes, which struck the 4 horses of Shri Ramji's chariot and overthrew them. The Lord raised his horses and, drawing the bowstring, let fly his darts in great fury. The arrows of Shri Ramji, the hero of Raghu's line, sped forth like a string of bees to enter Ravan's heads, which compared a bed of lotuses. Shri Ramji struck each of his bows with 10 arrows, which pierced through them, and blood gushed forth in torrents. Though bleeding profusely, the mighty demon rushed forward. The Lord once more fitted arrows to his bow. The hero of Raghu's line discharged 30 shafts, which shot down his heads and arms to the ground. But they grew afresh as soon as they were severed. Shri Ramji, however, struck off his heads and arms once more. Time after time the Lord smote off his arms and heads, but they were renewed as soon as they were blown off. Again and again the Lord tore off his arms and heads, for the king of Kaushala takes delight in playing. The sky was full of heads and arms, like an infinite number of Ketus and Rahus. It seemed as though multitudes of Rahus and Ketus were rushing through the air, streaming with blood, hit by the terrible shafts of Shri Ramji, the hero of Raghu's line, again and again. They could not fall to the ground. The arrows, as they flew through the air, each transfixing a set of heads, seemed like so many rays of angry sun, each strung all over with a number of Rahus. As quickly as the Lord struck off his heads, they were renewed without end, like the passions of a man, which grow ever more and more, even as he enjoys the pleasures of the sense. When the 10-headed monster perceived the multiplication of his heads, he thought no more of his own death, but was seized with burning wrath. The fool roared in his great pride and rushed forward with all his 10 bows drawn. Flying into a rage on the battlefield, the 10-headed monster discharged a shower of arrows and screened with it the chariot of Shri Ramji, the Lord of the Raghus, which was lost to sight for nearly half an hour, even as the sun is obscured by mist. When the gods raised a piteous cry, the Lord took up his bow full of wrath. Intercepting the enemy's arrows, he struck off his heads which covered all the quarters as well as the intermediate points of the compass, as well as heaven and earth. The severed heads flew through the air and struck terror into the monkeys' hearts as they uttered the cries of "Victory! Victory! Where is Lakshman? Where is Sugriv, the lord of monkeys? Where is the hero of Raghu's line, the lord of Kaushala? Where is Ramji?" cried the multitudes of heads as they sped. The monkeys took to flight as they saw them. The jewel of Raghu's line smilingly fitted arrows to his bow and shot the heads through and through. Taking a rosary of skulls in their hands, a large number of Kalikas, female attendants of goddess Kaliji, collected in numerous batches, as though, having bathed in the stream of blood, they had proceeded to worship the banyan tree of the battle. Then the 10-headed monster, in his fury, hurled forth his terrible lance, which flew straight towards Vibhishanji like the rod of death. When the Lord saw the most fearful lance coming, he thought to himself, "It is my sacred vow to put an end to the distress of the suppliant." Instantly Sri Ramji put Vibhishanji behind him and exposed himself to the full force of the spear. When the lance struck him, the Lord fainted for a while. Although it was a mere spot on the part of the Lord, the gods were filled with dismay. When Vibhishanji saw that the Lord had been grievously hurt, he seized his club and rushed forward full of rage. "You wretched, vile and perverse fool, you have antagonized gods, human beings, sages and Nagas alike. You devotedly offered your heads to Lord Shivji and have got millions for one in return. It is for this reason, O wretch, that you have been spared till this time. Your death, however, seems to be impending now. Fool, you seek happiness through enmity with Sri Ramji." So saying, Vibhishanji struck his brother right on the chest with his club. At the terrible impact of the mighty club on his chest, Ravan fell to the ground, all his 10 mouths spouting blood. But he picked himself up again and darted forward full of fury. The two mighty champions closed with each other in a wrestling contest, each mauling the other. Vibhishanji, however, who was inspired with the strength of Sri Ramji, the hero of Raghu's line, deemed his adversary as of no account. "Umaji," continues Lord Shivji, "Vibhishanji would never have dared of himself to look Ravan in the face. Armed with the might of Sri Ramji, the hero of Raghu's line, however, he now closed with his brother like death himself." Perceiving Vibhishanji much exhausted, Hanumanji rushed forward with a rock in his hand, crushing the chariot, the horses, and the charioteer all at once. He gave Ravan a kick right in his breast. The demon, however, kept standing, though shaking violently all over. Meanwhile, Vibhishanji withdrew into the presence of Sri Ramji, the protector of his devotees. Ravan thereupon challenged and assailed the monkey Hanumanji, who ascended into the air spreading his tail. Ravan laid hold of his tail, but the monkey Hanumanji flew along with him. The mighty Hanumanji then turned and closed with him. The two well-matched warriors fought overhead, each striking the other in great fury. Putting forth all their strength and stratagem, while in the air the two looked like a mountain of soot and Mount Sumeru contending with each other. When the demon could not be overthrown either through wit or through physical force, the son of the wind god invoked his lord. Invoking the hero of Raghu's line, the strong-minded Hanumanji challenged and struck Ravan. The two fell to the ground and rising again resumed fighting. The gods shouted, "Victory to both!" Seeing Hanumanji in such a strait, the monkeys and the bears sallied forth in furious haste, while Ravan, who was battle-mad, crushed all the champions by the tremendous might of his arm. Then, rallied by the hero of Raghu's line, the fierce monkeys rushed forward. Seeing the overwhelming monkey host, Ravan, however, displayed his Maya, that is, his black art. He became invisible for a moment, and then the wretch revealed himself in multitudinous forms. The 10-headed monster appeared in as many forms as there were bears and monkeys in the army of Shri Ramji, the Lord of the Raghus. The monkey host beheld numberless Ravans. The bears and monkeys then fled in every direction. The monkeys had no courage to stay. They fled, crying, "Help, Lakshman! Help, Raghuvirji, hero of Raghu's line!" Myriads of Ravans darted in all directions, thundering in a deep, shrill and frightful voice. All the gods took flight in panic, crying, "Now, brethren, abandon all hope of victory. A single Ravan subdued the whole heavenly host. Now that he has been multiplied, let us seek mountain caves." Only Brahmaji, the creator, Lord Shambhuji, Shivji, and the wise seers, whoever knew something of the Lord's glory, remained unshaken. They who understood the Lord's might remained fearless, but the monkeys took the apparitions for real enemies. They all lost courage and fled, monkeys and bears alike, crying in their dismay, "Protect us, our merciful Lord." The most powerful Hanumanji, Angad, Neel, and Nal, who were all valiant in battle, fought and crushed the myriads of gallant Ravanas that had sprouted on the soil of deception. The Lord of Kaushala smiled to see the dismay of the gods and the monkeys. He fitted an arrow to his famous Shang bow and wiped out the whole host of elusive Ravan. In a trice, the Lord dispersed the whole phantom, even as the veil of darkness is torn asunder with the rising of the sun. The gods rejoiced to see only one Ravan, and turning back, rained abundant flowers on the Lord. Raising his arm, the Lord of the Raghus rallied the monkeys, who returned, each shouting to other. Inspired by the might of their Lord, the bears and monkeys ran, and leaping briskly, they arrived on the battlefield. When Ravan saw the gods extolling Sri Ramji, he thought to himself, "They think I am now reduced to one. Fools, you have ever been victims of my thrashing." So saying, he sprang into the air with great indignation. As the gods fled uttering a piteous cry, Ravan said, "Wretches, whither can you go from my presence?" Seeing the distress of the gods, Angad rushed forward and with a bound seized Ravan by the foot and threw him to the ground. Having seized Ravan and thrown him to the ground, Bali's son Angad gave him a kick and then rejoined his lord. The 10-headed monster, on recovering himself, rose again and roared terribly in a shrill voice. Proudly drawing the string of all his 10 bows, he fitted a dart to each and rained a flight of arrows, wounding all the warriors in the enemy's ranks to their utter dismay and confusion, and rejoiced to see his own might. Thereupon the Lord of the Raghus tore off Ravan's heads and arms, along with the arrows and bows, more than once. But each time they all multiplied like sins committed in a holy place. The bears and monkeys grew furious when they saw the repeated renewal of Ravan's heads and arms. This fool would not die even though his arms and heads are cut off. So saying, the bear and monkey warriors darted towards him in great fury. Bali's son Angad, the son of the wind god, Nal and Neel, Sugriv, the king of monkeys, and Dvivida, all mighty heroes, hurled trees and rocks on him. Ravan, however, caught them and threw the same back upon the monkeys. Some of the monkeys tore the enemy's body with their claws, while others would kick him and run away. Then Nal and Neel climbed up his heads and set to tearing his foreheads with their claws. When he saw blood coming, he felt much troubled at heart and moved up his arm to catch hold of the monkeys. But they were not to be caught and leapt about from one hand to another like a pair of bees hovering over a bed of lotuses. At last, with a furious bound, he clutched them both, but before he could dash them to the ground, they twisted his arms and ran away. Again in his fury, he took 10 bows in his hands and with his arrows struck and wounded the monkeys. Having rendered Hanumanji and other monkey chiefs senseless, he rejoiced to see the approach of night. Seeing all the monkey heroes in a swoon, the valiant Jambavant rushed forward with a host of bears carrying rocks and trees, which they hurled upon him, challenging him again and again. This enraged the mighty Ravan, who seized a number of the warriors by the foot and began dashing them to the ground. Jambavant, the king of bears, flew into a rage when he saw the havoc wrought on his host and gave Ravan a kick on the breast. The violent impact of the foot on his breast made Ravan senseless, and he fell from his chariot to the ground, grasping a bear in each of his 20 hands like bees reposing by night in the folds of the lotus. Seeing him unconscious, the king of the bears struck him with his foot once more and rejoined the Lord. Perceiving that it was night, the charioteer lifted him onto his chariot and then tried to bring him back to his senses. On recovering from their swoon, the bears and monkeys all arrived in the presence of the Lord, while all the demons stood round Ravan in great consternation. That very night the demoness Trijata called on Sitaji and told her the whole story. When Sitaji heard of the renewal of the enemy's heads and arms, she felt much dismayed at heart. She wore a doleful countenance and her mind was filled with anxiety. Then Sitaji addressed Trijata thus: "Why do you not tell me, mother, what is going to happen? How can this plague of the universe be obliterated? He does not die even though the arrows of Sri Ramji, the Lord of the Raghus, have struck off his heads. It is heaven who is disposing of things perversely. Nay, it is my ill luck that sustains him, the same misfortune which separated me from Sri Hariji's lotus feet. The fate which created the phantom of a fictitious deer of gold still frowns at me. The same Providence who made me suffer terrible woes and prompted me to speak harsh words to Lakshman, nay, who pierced me through and through time and again with the mighty and poisoned shafts of separation from the Lord of the Raghus, and who keeps me alive even under such trying circumstances. It is He and He alone who is conserving Ravan's life." With many such words did Janakji's daughter make lament as she recalled to her mind the All-Merciful. Trijata replied, "Listen, O princess, the enemy of the gods will surely die if an arrow pierces his breast. But the Lord is careful not to strike him there, for He knows that Videhaji's daughter, yourself, abides in His heart. He is prevented by the thought that Janakji's daughter dwells in Ravan's heart, and that Jankiji's heart is his own abode. In his belly, again, are contained the numberless fears, which will all perish the moment his arrow pierces Ravan's heart." Trijata's explanation filled Sitaji's mind with both joy and sorrow in a superlative degree. Perceiving this, Trijata spoke again, "Now listen, fair lady, how your enemy will meet his death and shake off the great misgiving which still haunts your mind. Ravan will get disconcerted when his heads are cut off, with the result that you will escape his mind. That particular moment will the all-wise Sri Ramji strike him in his heart. With many such words did Trijata comfort Sitaji and then returned to her residence. As she recalled Sri Ramji's kind disposition, Videhaji's daughter was overwhelmed with the anguish of separation from him. She reproached the night and the moon in many ways. The night has already assumed the length of an age and does not end, she added. Disconsolable at her separation from Sri Ramji, Janakji's daughter grievously lamented within herself. When her agony of separation grew acute, her left eye and arm throbbed. Considering it to be a good omen, she took heart and said to herself, "The gracious hero of Raghu's line will surely meet me." In this palace, Ravan recovered from his swoon at midnight and cut up rough with his charioteer. "Fool, to have severed me from the battlefield! Shame, shame on you, O vile dullard!" The charioteer clasped his feet and deprecated his anger in many ways. As soon as it was dawn, Ravan mounted his car and sallied forth again. There was a great stir in the monkey host at the news of Ravan's return. Tearing up mountains and trees from wherever they could, mighty warriors rushed forward, gnashing their teeth. The fierce monkeys and terrible bears darted with mountains in their hands, which they hurled forth with the utmost fury. The demons, who were unable to resist the onslaught, turned and fled. Having thus scattered the enemy ranks, the powerful monkeys next closed around Ravan and discomfited him by buffeting him on every side and tearing his body with their claws. Finding the monkeys most powerful, Ravan took thought. Consequently, he became invisible and in a moment revealed his elusive power. As he let loose his elusive power, terrible beings appeared on the scene. Goblins, ghosts, and ghouls with bows and arrows in their hands. Yoginis holding a sword in one hand and a human skull in another, from which they quaffed draughts of fresh blood, danced and sang many a song. They uttered horrible cries of "Seize and kill," which echoed all around. With their mouths wide open, they rushed to devour the monkeys, who then took to their heels. But whithersoever they turned in their flight, they saw a blazing fire. The monkeys and bears were thus in a quandary. Then Ravan began raining on them a shower of sand. Having thus flabbergasted the monkeys on all sides, the 10-headed monster roared again. All the heroes, including Lakshman and Sugriv, the king of the monkeys, fainted. The bravest of them wrung their hands, crying, "O Ram, alas, Raghunathji, Lord of the Raghus!" Having thus crushed the might of all, he wrought another delusion. He manifested a host of Hanumanjis who rushed forward with rocks in their hands and encircled Sri Ramji in a dense cordon on every side. With uplifted trails and gnashing their teeth, they shouted, "Seize and kill him! Let him not escape!" Surrounded by their trails on every side, the Lord of Kaushala shone in their midst. In their midst, the king of Kaushala, with his dark-hued body, shone forth, as resplendent as a lofty tamla tree encircled by a magnificent hedge of multitudinous rainbows. The gods experienced in their heart a mixed feeling of joy and sorrow and raised the cries of "Victory! Victory! Victory!" The hero of Raghu's line now flew into a rage and with a single arrow instantly dispersed the delusion. The delusion having vanished, the monkeys and bears rejoiced and all turned back with trees and rocks in their hands. Sri Ramji shot forth a volley of arrows, which once more cut off Ravan's arms and heads to the ground.